Ooh, let me get that. There we go. What's going on, everybody? This is Jackie Lukeman, and sort of Lukeman Nation, but sort of just Black Power Media movie night on a really, really special occasion. I am really very happy to be able to share this um, presentation on the documentary Dope is Death that is being screened by the Malcolm X grassroots movement. And it chronicles the work of Dr. Mtulu Shakur, who, if you don't know who he is, you're about to find out. And his work, not just with the Lincoln Hospital Project, is extremely important, but also the continuing struggle to free all of our political prisoners is also a very important part of this discussion. So, for people who were kind of confused, and I know it's a little confusing, if you signed up for the to view the Malcolm X grassroots movement screening of the documentary at 7 p.m. directly through their Zoom, great, wonderful. They will start screening at 7 p.m. But if you haven't, then I registered us as Black Power Media so that I can show you the documentary here and we can have a discussion about that as we're watching the documentary. And also, I wanted to take some time before we watch the movie to be really clear for those of you in Black Power Media who have no idea who Mtulu Shakur is, who the Malcolm X grassroots movement is, and why these issues are so important to our organizing today. That's why I wanted to take this time to have a little chat to get us ready for this documentary. So I'm really, really glad to have with me tonight two comrades who are involved in organizing locally. And the first, I'm very happy to be joined by Jomo Stith, brother Jomo Stith of the Malcolm X. I haven't had enough water today. The Malcolm X grassroots movement in DC, right?
Absolutely, yes, indeed.
Yes, joining me today. Thank you so much, brother, for joining this evening on really short notice too. So really, really appreciate you being able to hop on.
Absolutely. So excited to be here and excited to be talking about Dr. Mtulu Shakur, and was an easy yes to say to it. I think one of the things that's been beautiful about my experience organizing in the campaign is the way the elders, whenever you make a request for Mtulu, is like, yeah, wherever you need me. And so carrying that same spirit forward. So wherever y'all need me to show up to talk about Mtulu in the campaign, happy to do so. So excited to be here, and so excited to hear y'all are showing the film on your website.
Cool, wonderful. And our other guest is our comrade in Oliver, Oliver Robinson with Pan African Community Action. I can't see you, Oliver, but I hope we can hear you.
Yes, and I can hear you, Jackie. I'm not sure what's going on with the camera. Let me see if I can fix that momentarily.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, I'm really excited that we're able to. There you are. Dope, peace. So I'm really excited that we're able to do this because for a few reasons. And for people who don't know, this issue of drug abuse in our communities and the lack of treatment and the criminalization and the moralization of our people is a very personal issue with me for very recent reasons, but also because because my husband did suddenly pass away from what we suspect it was an overdose, was an accidental overdose back in June, after a long struggle with a dual, I guess they don't call it dual diagnosis anymore. I can't remember what the medical term is, but bipolar disorder that was untreated, and also struggled with substance abuse that he thought he had a handle on. But when life happens, when and then the bipolar disorder takes over, and there's no treatment for either. There's no, but also, there it has been so much, I guess I want to call it childhood trauma that I like blocked out, that there were family members, loved ones who I watched succumb to crack addiction. And this came after, the heroin addiction of the Vietnam era or the post-Vietnam era. But, I had family members who I had heard tell about their struggles during that period of time. So there's this like long line of what I see, Jomo, as a very political, and I want to call it chemical warfare campaign using drugs. First, it was heroin. And maybe that's not even first, because we're not even talking about, the prohibition era, but for modern, let's start with the topic for tonight, where Dr. Shakur focused his expertise, and that was treating um, uh, uh, people who suffer from addiction, which was mostly heroin at the time during the 70s, with acupuncture for detoxification. I mean, I think we lose the history of the entire um, chemical warfare against Black, Latinx, working class, and poor communities during the late 60s and the 70s, where heroin was concerned, because we focus so much on the new chemical warfare that happened with crack, and now with meth, and now with opioids and that kind of thing. So I'm wondering if you can give us a little bit of background on that history of that period of time that Dr. Shakur was focusing his expertise, and what our communities were going through then, that is so connected to what we're seeing today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that we're learning, and I think that is kind of really exemplified in the case of Dr. Mtulu Shakur, is the kind of counter insurgency that was happening in our communities, fueled by the federal government. I think it was about 2 years ago, the huge article that came out talking about the Nixon administration, right? And they were like, yeah, we put drugs into Black communities to then deliberately criminalize an entire people, thus feeding the mass incarceration that we are witnessing now, or trying to organize against. And so you're absolutely right, Larry. There is a direct connection to that, and we understand that as part of a plan of genocide, the acceptable killing off of a portion of our folks. And so Dr. Mtulu Shakur was a part of a set of revolutionary healers who were taking that on, right, and trying to find alternatives to the federal government's program of methadone, which they understood was continuing to feed an addiction crisis. It was also, I think it's important to understand even the economics of it, right? There was huge pharmaceutical companies that were making millions of dollars off of prescribing methadone for returning vets, flooding our communities with methadone as the only methodology to treat addiction. So treating addiction with addiction, kind of just like we understand how they try to treat capitalism with capitalism, right? They try to treat police with more police, right? They try to treat so it's part of that plan. And Dr. Mtulu Shakur was a part of, again, a set of folks who were interrupting that dynamic, who had brought something new. I think one of the things that we learn or know about Dr. Mtulu Shakur is that at the time that he was doing the work, acupuncture and many Eastern medicines were actually outlawed in the United States. And so him actually practicing acupuncture was considered illegal. Him getting certified, like part of the story is that they had to go to Canada to get taught acupuncture because it was outlawed in the United States. So there's a way that even as we understand kind of this alternative natural medicine, kind of alternative medicine industry that has emerged, most of it was seeded and won by Dr. Mtulu Shakur and those other kind of revolutionary healthcare workers who really pushed and opened it and made it available. So absolutely connected to that and what we again understand today. And as we're in the middle of a pandemic and we don't know who to trust, right? We can't get sound medical advice. I think this is one of the costs that I always think about when we think about kind of what it's meant for Dr. Shakur to be in prison for 36 years. This is 36 years of expertise of healing Black people that's been off the streets, right? That we need in this particular moment when we don't know who to trust. We need those kind of folks being able to have been out and have developed the institutions that could help us to meet this particular moment.
I mean, I think I'm still stuck on what you said about acupuncture being outlawed in this country at that time, which is actually something I did not know. And Oliver, I mean, so that informs like the criminalization of a community-based holistic approach to a problem that the government absolutely created and manufactured. But I mean, Oliver, when you look at the fact that natural medicine, acupuncture was illegal at the time, how do you situate that in the way the government responded then to the problem of addiction in our communities, Black communities, Latinx communities, poor white communities, even, and like the way we see it now in our communities?
And I think it's an eerie parallel, right? What we're seeing now with what we saw then. I think anytime we've attempted to exercise any kind of autonomous action or control over caring for our own people, whether it's medicine, whether it's food, whether it's housing, whether it's defense, anytime we attempt to subvert absolute state dominance and we try to create our own institutions of caring for folks, right? We see the pushback, right? We see the pushback, whether it's the free breakfast program, whether it's acupuncture, no matter what it is, we see the pushback when we begin to enter a stage of self-determination and begin to push for our own institutions, right? And begin to practice our own ways of, caring for our people. And I think what you're seeing now, right, the blatant, in this COVID era, just disregard for human life across the board, and that affects like our people the most. But also, the pockets of resistance we do see, right? We've seen absolute proliferation of state forces, the increase of the police, Biden, on the campaign trail, spouting the rhetoric of defund the police, and here we are a year and a half later, extensive increases in police budgeting across the country, right, to push back against the same kinds of rebellion and sort of striving for control that we see in pockets throughout our community. So I think it's just indicative of a larger issue in which whenever we strive to take control over the things that are subverting us, we're going to be met with that resistance. And that control, that power over our own destiny is always the catalyst of further violence and further state repression.
And it's wild because, like, in the 70s, acupuncture is outlawed, these kinds of, which also I think speaks to like the xenophobia, the blatant, rampant xenophobia, hatred of Asian people that this country, has always had. It's wild because, in the 70s, acupuncture is outlawed, but now, it's covered under, well, sort of, kind of covered under health insurance if you have a decent enough health insurance plan, and you can go pretty much anywhere and get. So I just really think that's wild. But when you look at the kind of uses for acupuncture and things, treatments like that, it's never geared toward easing the kinds of problems that Dr. Mtulu Shakur was using it for back then. It's not, you really used to ease any mental distress. It really is marketed now as a feel-good kind of treatment. It's like self-care as opposed to actual health care. And I don't know, Jomo, do you think that's like also when this capitalist country decides, well, too many people have found value in this thing that we have called illegal, let's shift the focus, the purpose of it from, something that is helpful to ease people's pain as, some recreational thing that has no real medicinal value, but it's just something that, nice that you can do for yourself that, of course, capitalists benefit from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's what the system does, right? We can think of all the ways. I agree. We've seen that, right? We've seen that with like the term self-care, right? You get that coming out of the radical history of Audre Lorde, who is saying that in a context where she's fighting cancer, trying to fight her oppressor at the same time, right?
Mm-hmm.
To where it gets, capitalized now, and it's, take a day off and, or so, and devoid of community, right? I think that's or buy this product to care for yourself, not necessarily being community. Yeah. So absolutely. We've seen that. And even, however we feel about Black Lives Matter, there was a point when you couldn't even say that. Now it's, it's all over the place. It's been swallowed up. And that's kind of what we understand how the system operates, right? It does seek to swallow whole what it can, hollow it out, and sell it back to us, right? They try to do that with Malcolm, putting him on a stamp, and Harriet Tubman on a $20 bill. So, colonizers and capitalists are going to do what they got to do, and we have to do what we need to do, and that's struggle for our liberation.
Yeah, that's wild, because I was just watching a little while ago before we started this, the All African People's Revolutionary Party, New Mexico's Saturday movie day, and I think they do it once a month. And I'm going to see if they'll let me let us broadcast those here on Black Power Media, because they do some good stuff. And today they showed a film about Fannie Lou Hamer and how she, we recognize her as someone who struggled for the right to vote, to seat the Mississippi Democratic Freedom Party, as in opposition to the racist all-white Democratic Party in Mississippi, right? But I just learned today that this woman, who grew up, on a plantation, had a farm. And it was a freedom farm. And she had what was called a pig bank, which is just the coolest damn thing in the world to me, where they raised pigs. And if you could come and get a baby pig, and then you raise the baby pig, and then you bring the pig back. So, and share with it's that kind of stuff, that she's growing food and she's sharing it with the community, because people couldn't eat. People were that poor. And it's that kind of legacy of struggle, of community that our people have engaged in, that it doesn't kind of make me angry. It pisses me off that we don't pay attention to it in our discourse about revolution, right? Because we all think about revolution as one thing, but and it's always like armed struggle, and that's fine. I'm for that. I'm down with that. Trust me, I'm ready for the armed struggle. But in the meantime, people do need to eat. People do need legal aid. People do need their bills paid. And then people do have regular life shit that happens that they need help with. And then the question is always asked, like, how do we deal with that? And then it's like, people are like, I don't know. And I'm just like, how do you not know? Because we've done this all before. But I was reminded today that we don't talk about the ways that our elders have addressed these issues in previous iterations of this struggle, because part of that history has been left out. So, Oliver, how do you see as a member of PACA focused on organizing a working class and poor Black community over here in Southeast DC, because we live in the same area, a community of people that is economically oppressed, obviously, that suffers from serious health disparities because of the economic oppression, and then also continuing to struggle from the coping mechanism, right, of substance abuse, because that's really what it is, part of
Yeah.
it, you know. How do you see being able to organize people in such a pressure cooker like this around these really simple ideas of maybe not so much do for self, but here is what we can do. Here's what we can do to address some of these issues, while at the same time kind of having a conversation with people about political prisoners and the need to, challenge and fight the system and the state.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, the pressure cooker of DC, it adds a whole nother layer, right? We kind of talk about how policed DC is and how prevalent and active those forces are. So that's another layer that you're also dealing with, as well as sort of the other issues you're speaking to. I think it's a multifaceted strategy, right? I think, of course, popular education, and reaching people about sort of, okay, what are who was Mtulu Shakur? What were some of his practices? Because those are things that are lost, right, in our history, and we get a watered down liberalization of every revolutionary figure we've ever known, if we even know them. So part of it, I think, is our people don't know what kind of ground was even paved that we are now trying to build further from. So I think that popular education, which is something we focus on in PACA a lot, we have our Mtulu Shakur study group, right? And we engage in that popular education because I think that learning with and from the people, that kind of mutual exchange of ideas, you better understand the conditions in DC, right? Better understand issues on a local level, and also tie things back, right, to that Black radical tradition, because a lot of that is just missing, and there's a reason for that. There's been a systematic erasure of that knowledge, and I think beyond that, right, the idea of programs pending revolution, right, an idea that is generations old but still just so relevant, right? And we talk about how do we get people the things that they need, but not also how do we inspire people by creating and doing our part to have people create a real communal framework in which everyone is caring for themselves, right? That's been a failing of sort of the liberal iteration of mutual aid, where it just becomes glorified charity in many instances. But the real purpose, right, is how can people care for each other, and how can that care through programs, how does that become self-governance, right? How does that become people's democracy? How does that become sort of these bigger ideas in which now we are orienting the community around power, around having its own institutions? And I think that starting again with that popular education, with even small programs, right? A program does not to begin being massive. It can start in an apartment building. It can start in a neighborhood. It can start small, but something in which you're orienting people around a common idea, and we're starting to kind of push back and take back our own ability to provide things for ourselves without dependency on the nonprofit superstructure, the state, constant dependency on the police to resolve issues. So there's a whole host of things I think we do, but I think popular education and starting small with programs specific to, in our case, DC, is really how we start to create a revolutionary mindset within people.
Yeah, I think that's really, really important. And I remember like last year when Abdus and I started what he liked to call the Revolutionary Garden. Our neighbors were like, "What are y'all doing? Why are you putting the garden in the front yard? That's not where it goes." I'm like, "Well, first of all, this is my house. I pay taxes on this shit. I can put anything out there I want to." So, but then when I explain to people, the idea is we grow food out here in the front yard, and if people are hungry, they come by and get it. That's just, you want some tomatoes, get some tomatoes. You want some beans, get some beans. And it was so wild because people were like, "Oh no, I can never, no, I can never do that." And I think there's so much indoctrination against communalism. We have believed this whole rugged individual stuff even for ourselves, that like when people are literally just like, "Yes, here is some stuff for you, take it." People are, I think, some of us are way too bourgeois for our own good. Like, we don't want to admit that we're broken and that and that we need help, right? And then it's like people are so individualistic that if that they don't think that, okay, if I don't need this, I bet you I know somebody who does. So let me let them know. But then, it comes into the thing of, well, I don't want those people in our neighborhood. So there's all of this, like all of these hurdles that we have to overcome to really reach the kind of effectiveness, I think, that the programs that people like Dr. Mtulu Shakur was like he started, and it's like, but I don't think it was easy for him either, right?
No.
So so I mean, I think Jomo Oliver asked a great question, and that was, who is Mtulu Shakur?
Mhm.
And while his work in acupuncture detoxification with the Black Panther Party and the Young Lords is incredibly important, that's not the only part of his legacy. So, I mean, who is Dr. Mtulu Shakur?
Right. I mean, Dr. Mtulu Shakur is he's a healer, a freedom fighter, father, grandfather, comrade, and yeah, just really an amazing human being. And it's been one of the beautiful things I have been noticing is, again, just how people who have met Dr. Mtulu Shakur are just immediately impacted, transformed by his presence. Everyone has a story around how he, even from behind bars is, continuing to build peace, to transform young people's lives. And they're coming out of jail transformed, like as because prisons ain't there to do that. That ain't never been their job. But he's been continuing to have an impact. It's been really beautiful. But Doc is a product of the New African Independence Movement. He had been active since the age of 13. We just learned this last night on our opening kickoff, as we had some of the elders getting together to tell their story, that he had been the Nation of Islam used to bring around a van, and Mtulu at 13 was some of the young folks that were being brought to the mosque and were part of Malcolm's cadre of young folk that they were organizing around. Later at 17, right, he's at New Bethel Church in 1969 with the shootout, right? And he's credited with saving his mentor's life, Herman Ferguson, and his partner, Aya Ferguson, by throwing his body between them in the spray of bullets coming from the Detroit police, right? And so then you're absolutely right. Then the history that we know about with Lincoln Detox. It's also Dr. Mtulu Shakur, along with Afeni Shakur and others, who helped start the COINTEL National Task Force, right? That begins to expose COINTELPRO. Prior to that, again, our movement was under attack, right? Folks have to realize the assassination of Fred Hampton, the arrest of the Panther 21, come after a moment that the FBI declares the Black Panther Party and really Black liberation as enemy number one, unleashing violence and the kind of COINTELPRO tactics that we've now learned so much about. It was Dr. Mtulu Shakur and others that first began to expose their devious and illegal plot. And for many of us, we say that's why he continues to be incarcerated to this day, and why they had to take him off the street, because he was exposing the lies. So that's some of his work, and then the work that we know about him being an acupuncturist, healing, reaching out to thousands of folks. A lot of folks like myself, we come to know Dr. Mtulu Shakur through his son, Tupac Shakur, and his music and the work that he's had, the influence he's had on other hip hop artists like Mo Preem and others through that. And as they talk about the Thug Code comes out of the work of Dr. Mtulu Shakur, trying to again convert the criminality mindset of our young folk that have been imposed on for their survival under capitalism to one of a revolutionary mindset. So and again, as I've been learning, reading the articles, he has still continued to do his work behind while incarcerated, being a guidance and an offer to young folk behind bars, and being a catalyst to their transformation and their healing.
Now, you're going to have to explain the Thug Code, right? Because, a lot of folks, claim they don't know. So I want I don't want, explain the
Uh,
thug code for folks.
yeah, I'm not an expert on it either, but from what I understand, I think God, when was this? Maybe about the 90s, mid 90s,
Mhm.
late 90s. In order to again address the rampant violence that was happening in the community, they came up with the thug code, kind of based off the that what is it? The hate you give,
Yeah.
uh, that part. And so again, coming up with a set of kind of restrictions that are meant to allow to begin to seed some type of different code around how they would operate in the streets that was meant to try to protect community along the way. So that was some of the work. I know there are other folks who I've heard. I think Dr. Kukoi Patterson's son might be working with some other folks to kind of revive the thug code.
Mm.
But that's some of the impact that Doc's had. I think the other piece, real quick, just to going back to Oliver's point, like right now in DC, there's a fentanyl crisis, from what I understand. Like drug
Yeah.
addiction amongst our
Yeah.
people are picking up. And one of the things I think is so relevant about Dr. Mtulu Shakur to this moment and to what we're facing in DC is that those were the very people that he outreached to. Those are the folks that he helped heal, that he brought in. He talks about, rubbing their feet till they fell asleep, right? And then when they would come back, they would start putting them in through political education classes so that they would understand that at the root of their addiction was this coping to capitalism, this coping to oppression, and that the only way that they were really going to solve and heal from their addiction was through liberation and struggle. And so you have many folks who were struggling with drug addiction turn their lives around, give their lives to struggle. And that's also what made Doc so dangerous and such a powerful figure, was that ability that those that most of us look past, walk past, don't see no value in. Mtulu saw value in them. He saw a soldier, he saw warriors for our people, and he went about healing them and transforming them. And we know the government couldn't allow that kind of power to be out on the streets.
Yeah. I mean, Oliver, how how difficult is it to have these conversations with our folks around here? Because I think this is a different kind of, and I always ask this question to my male comrades, because I think it's a valid question, right? Because
Yeah.
there is a code on the streets. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, you as a woman, I'm not gonna roll up on anybody and just, I might think I'm bad like that, but sometimes that's not always appropriate. Have you seen the difficulty, or no, let me not say that. What is it like to organize with young brothers, particularly in our community, who are still kind of, very much indoctrinated into capitalism, but, the most destructive expression of capitalism for poor folks, which is, like selling drugs and that kind of stuff. How do you speak to our younger brothers about people like Mtulu Shakur? Do you find that they are receptive? I mean, what are those conversations like? Because if I have those conversations, I'm gonna sound like somebody's mama, honestly. So this is why I cannot have these conversations with some of these young brothers, at the outset, because they may not be receptive to that kind of energy. So what's that like?
I think that it's twofold, because I think that while there is a disillusionment, right, with the way society is, and that often manifests itself in sort of the coping mechanisms we're talking about, I do think that for many of our people, especially now in this COVID era, there is an understanding that society is split between have and have not, and I think that consciousness is there. It just may not be articulated through the politics that we've come to understand. So I think that a lot of it is patience, and of course, to the gender dynamic that you speak to, that's very real. And I think that as organizers, we have to be tactful in how we approach things. We don't create a dangerous situation just with someone who's a stranger, just period. That's just general practice as far as how do you build a successful strategy to engage with new people. But I do think that across the board, it's patience. I think that in the first interaction, You're not going to come up to somebody and explain who Mtulu Shakur was and break down everything he did and expect them to care, right? That's not how political development works, right? People have different inroads in which they can become part of struggle. Some people, they're going to see a program, want to get involved. Some people will come to a study group. Some people, they're going to see you doing a speak out or an open mic, and that's going to be their inroad. And then they'll be open to more of a conversation down the road. So I think there have to be multiple ways for folks to be engaged, because not everyone is going to be as open to that initial conversation, especially when the information is new, right? When the propaganda around consumerism and luxury is so pervasive, when you come with something that's basically new, unheard of, right? That's not going to be immediately received. I think, though, consistency, actually knocking on doors and getting off Zoom, which I think we have trouble doing, many of us, that's where it starts. And as months go on, years go on, right? But it takes, that's how long it takes. I think that is, as a younger person, I think that's a disconnect I see between mass movement building of the past and the mass movement building of today. There's not an appreciation for how long things should take. And part of that is the neoliberalism of, fast moving culture, immediate gratification, social media, brand building, that creates this sort of dissonance with what it actually takes. That person that has never heard of Mtulu Shakur, they're not going to join your organization by next week, right? It's not going to happen. And these things take time, and you have to be consistent, and you won't win everyone over. But if you put in months and months of consistent effort, eventually you make you don't expect.
Yeah, and in a wild way, this is where I see the experience of elders playing a really important part, because this was something that Abdus and I were really clear on. And it was our role in this struggle, movement, whatever you want to call it. I like to call it a struggle because I love the struggle. I mean, we are at war. We are at war for our people. That would please, I don't want anybody watching this to have any kind of illusions that, we're just playing here. No, we understand we are at war with a very evil and inhumane and murderous capitalist, white supremacist, patriarchal, imperialist system. That's every day. That does take our lives. And I mean, I wish that it were not true, but my experience proves that. My late husband's experience proves that. But in a really and it is uncomfortable, but it's actually it is something that we understood our role to be as elders, older than the people. A lot of the people, almost all of the people that we organize with, were in our 50s. And nearly everybody we organize with the exception of like the national organizers, they're all 20 years, 30 years younger than we are. So we saw ourselves as, number one, the people to provide the support. Whatever you all need, you need signs made, you need bail money, we'll try to help you out. That, look, you need a place to stay, the material support, whatever. But also, we recognize that it was important for us to bring our whole authentic selves and all of our experiences to this struggle. So this is why, as difficult as it can be, and it was very difficult for him, but he was getting to the point where he was talking more about his struggles with addiction, because he understood that this is a problem that we're not really very good at addressing in our organizing. And part of it is because of the shame that people who struggle with addiction feel, and the moralizing that we've all been conditioned to kind of have toward people who struggle with addiction. And, again, he didn't even understand that he had bipolar disorder that was undiagnosed, that just made everything so much worse. But I think that when I listened to, when I had conversations with people who I finally got to have a conversation with, Daruba bin Wahad, Jalil Muntakim, Dr. Coleman Adebayo, and all of these other people, I was most appreciative of their transparency, not with how great they were, right? but with the things that they struggled with, the things that they didn't do so well. Um, the what they may have thought of as failures, right? So that's how I see my role in this struggle. That's why I really, really, really wanted to show this movie, because yes, getting Dr. Shakur out of prison before he transitions, because he has cancer, he's undergoing bone marrow treatment, Jomo, I think.
Mhm.
Incarcerated, so that's not good, y'all. That's not. That he's not getting the best care that he could possibly get. His health is declining. So yes, and he is scheduled to be released in 2024, I believe, but because of his health, we are afraid that he will not last that long, but we know that's what the state wants. So yeah, we have to free Mtulu Shakur. In the meantime, we also have to do the work to free our people on the streets from, as much as we can, all of the demons that beset them. And it's not just, we can't just limit it to capitalism and imperialism. We have to make shit personal, right? We have to make it personal about what people are struggling with. So, and my husband and I had these conversations about, his struggles. That's why he started his own little podcast that he made me the producer of. But, you know, I do wonder, since both of you are younger than myself, um, how you see the role of elders, like who do have experiences that, not great. We didn't do everything right. God knows. I don't know how I survived with all the weird stuff I did. What do you want to see from elders? What do you wish the elders that you organize with, what do you wish they would do better to make what you do easier, more effective, and to feel like we are organizing in a community to build a community?
That's to me. That's a heavy.
Yeah, it is a heavy question.
Either one of you. Either one of you.
Yeah, I think it's so important to, when we it's kind of essential Kwame Ture, like get you some KT, like you can't really begin to understand any problem Black folk are facing without some kind of calculation of white supremacy, right? And so when we talk about a generation gap, right? When you go look at the COINTEL papers, they talk about a particular emphasis on young folk, right? That we want young people, Black youth, to understand this, that you better off being an athlete, you better off being a rapper, you better off being a drug dealer than you will be being a revolutionary, right? And so it's that kind of intentional severing of intergenerational struggles, breaking them apart. Thank you for that. We dropped that around the African Holistic Health Association. Just want to say that name. And Dr. Kokoye Patterson is one of the folks who's carrying on Dr. Mtulu Shakur's legacy. And again, we should be engaging. That's some real practical stuff that we could do. We need to organize with them, get out in the streets. We need to figure out how we be putting peas in people's ears and whatnot. And that's some of the intergenerational work that can be done. The little, what they call them, I forgot what they call, but the seeds in the ear, right?
Yeah.
We need to be able to heal ourselves, heal our communities. There's some real practical things that we can do to address that. And I think that's part of kind of that intergenerational, the handing it down, right? We call it a Black radical tradition, right? So it's something that has to be handed down. And so I think that when we see intergenerational rifts, we have to understand that bridges have been destroyed and that they need to be rebuilt. And that, when we see younger people other than us talking about we not our grandparents, we're not our ancestors, it's like, okay, all right. Maybe your ancestor wasn't Gloria Richardson. You know what I'm saying? Maybe your ancestor. So and we have to raise those questions. But I think that again, there are ways that we are rebuilding. I think that's been one of the beautiful things in the campaign has been the intergenerational effort. So you have the elders who kind of knew Mtulu, and then you have young folks who weren't even alive 36 years ago when Mtulu was captured, all working for his freedom. And so I think that that's it's definitely something that we need to heal in our communities, but it's also definitely something that is manufactured. And we always have to ask ourselves, who benefits from that? Who benefits from intergenerational divides in our community, right? And that'll give us a clue as to also how we begin to solve it.
Oliver, what
yeah, no, and just to add on a I think another level, kind of in terms of things that are needed. I think that really it's just a presence. I think that oftentimes there's that feeling that we're relearning the lessons of the 60s now, right? And we talk about the parallels of this era and that era often, right? And I think that sort of in relearning those lessons, there are some things that just simply having that kind of guidance, we don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel all the time. Even on an organizational level, folks that have been in the movement for a while, there are dynamics within organizations that you've experienced. There's dynamics interpersonally amongst organizers you've experienced. There's things in which when something arises, it's clear and you can kind of provide direction in a way where we're not sort of, stuck with challenges and there's no one to kind of provide that oversight. So I do think that insight on a personal level, organization, having elders who have been there and can kind of, steer things in a certain direction and prevent us from just sort of rehashing lessons that were learned over and over. I think that's very important. And again, that is to Jami's point, that's why there has been such an emphasis on the disconnect between generations, right? And why you have these gaps, right? And I think that, that gap is reinforced by folks not respecting their elders as well, right? It's not simply the absence of elders as much as it's a generation that's been told, the sort of the extreme emphasis on youth. You're only valuable when you're young. Make money while you're young. Live fast while you're young. Right? Those sort of capitalist, narratives and sort of propaganda. It creates a disdain for elders. Why would you ever listen to someone old? Someone old doesn't have anything valuable. Like those are things that people embrace and they actively, carry with them. And then we wonder why we also have this divide, right? So it's a multi-sided thing that I think we just have to be more honest about what it means to struggle intergenerationally and not become siloed, young folks over here doing whatever, older folks over here doing their thing, because that doesn't help anyone in the end.
And I mean, I can't even be mad at the, why would you listen to something? Because honestly, I think, and this is my perspective from someone who is a little bit older. I think some of us elders, not all of us, but some of us, too many times I have heard us be in a room full of younger people trying to organize and they just sit there and first they beat younger organizers over the head about what they're doing wrong, which, dear God, nobody wants to sit through that. and it's always stuff that really doesn't make any difference, right? It's always the vernacular people use and oh, you guys are too angry. And it's like, no, be angry, be as angry as you need to be. Why? I don't understand why you're not. But then the other thing that I think we do is that we don't want to. We want to tell people what to do too much. We want to be in charge. We want to be, we expect to be the leaders instead of, being comfortable, being available, just being available to be called on for whatever. Right. And I think that is really, that was something that Abdus was really good at. He was just like, I am not joining any organization and getting in front of people and telling them this is how we did this, that, and the third. Because this man was an imam, at a mosque. He, organized in prison. He knew plenty of folks from the Nation of Islam in New Jersey, and he was doing all of this stuff. So he had all of this experience, and then I was doing my thing. We had all this experience, and we were both just like, these kids are fine. And they don't need us to tell us. They don't need us to tell them. Shit, they really don't. What we need to do is to let them know that we are available for them to help. And when they want us to help, we better be there. That's it. That's our role. And I don't see a lot of that in some folks who have been in the movement a long time. And I think I get sort of why that is. I think it's less about ego. It is for some folks, but I think it's less about ego than it is about us feeling like we are running out of time. So it's I think it's less about ego than it is more about desperation and frustration that we're seeing, another generation of our people, our kids, having to relearn what we've already done. But I think that's just how kind of revolutions go, especially when we are inside the belly of the beast. Right? It's impossible for I don't think it's going to be possible for us to, stage an armed revolution like the PAIGC did. That's I don't think that's how it's going to happen here. I think that might be a part of it, but I don't think that's going to be the totality of it. And I think it's just because we're old and we're crotchety and we're impatient. We're just like, this taking too long. And we could just get this done if y'all kids did this, that, and the third, and that's a complete disrespect of the struggle that you all are entering into. And I just really appreciate the fact that organizations like the Malcolm X grassroots movement, Pan-African Community Action, and all the other organizations that we are connected to still exist and are continuing the work, because that does give me hope. It does give me hope. Yeah, it is. It's I'm telling you, 55 is frustrating as hell. It's extremely frustrating that we have not defeated capitalism yet. It is. I mean, I know that makes no sense, but it's like, damn, man, we've been doing this for centuries. And we're having to do it. We're doing all kinds of other things at the same time, still freeing our political prisoners who fought this fight before us, right? Still trying to carry on their work, while we're still fighting these new battles that are cropping up, which aren't really new. They're the same battles as, as before. They just, a new generation. So yeah, it is very frustrating to have to be talking about Dr. Mtulu Shakur and not talking about him from the perspective that we're so happy that our elder is home and comfortable. We're so happy that Dr. Shakur is at home and is comfortable, and that we are replicating what he started with the Black Panther Party and the young lords at the Lincoln Hospital in our communities. And we see the fruit of that. It is frustrating to see that our people still die from substance abuse and go their whole adult life with no treatment for severe mental disorders, and to see it happening again in a new generation. But something you said a little earlier, Jomo, was funny, because it's something that we Christians say all the time. People put their lives over to Christ. It is encouraging and hopeful to me to see people give their lives over to the struggle, because we do things like this. I wish we didn't have to, but the reality is that we do. So let me stop talking, because in a few minutes the documentary will air. So tell us, Jomo, about Malcolm X grassroots movement, this campaign, and what people are going to see tonight.
Absolutely. So the Malcolm X grassroots movement is a movement of Black folks, New Africans, who our organization is dedicated to defending the human rights of our folks here. We promote self-defense, self-determination, and self-respect. We have 6 principles, and one of them is calling for the release of all political prisoners. And the Free Mtulu campaign is our expression of that. Again, the history with us is Dr. Mtulu Shakur is one of the founders of the New African People's Organization, which is a founding institution of the Malcolm X grassroots movement. And we also want to call folks to support all political prisoners, particularly those of us who claim to love Assata. She told us that we had a responsibility to free those who helped free her. Dr. Mtulu Shakur is one of those who is in prison because of that. But what you're going to see tonight with the Dope is Death film, we'll be looking at that period of time at Lincoln Detox, again, of very important organizing history, again, for us to understand, they were taking over public institutions like this hospital that was known for, you walk in and you don't walk out, right? And transforming it into a place of liberation. You'll get to hear from different folks who were part of that work. It was a multiracial work that was happening. And one of the things I love and I encourage folks to pay attention to is check out Dr. Mtulu's style. Now, I know it's probably a little liberal of me or whatnot, but one of the things I'm looking forward to when Doc is released is seeing him step out, because every time I see him in the film, I'm like, man, that must have been a fly outfit that you had on there. After the film is part of a Netflix and chill, so grab your beloved, grab your family, watch the film. After the film, we'll be joined by Susan Rosenberg, who is one of Mtulu's comrades at Lincoln Detox, part of, I think, the May 2nd Communist Organization, did some really amazing organizing. After that, we'll be talking about her relationship to Dr. Mtulu Shakur, the work that was seen in the film, and then it'll be a great place for folks to ask questions and learn more about the campaign.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, Jomo. Oliver, tell us about PACA and tell us what PACA has going on coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. So PACA, we're also struggling for the liberation and self-determination of all African peoples, and also advocate on behalf of the release of all political prisoners. And we're building a community control of the police campaign. Generally, right, our focus is Southeast DC, and what community control of the police is, for folks who don't know, it calls for democratic control of policing by the community by way of a community control board, and that board is empowered through the democracy of the people. And in the spirit of Mtulu Shakur, right, who is an advocate of community control of healthcare, we believe that we must strive for power and struggle for power, and we need community control of all the institutions in our community, from policing to housing to healthcare. So part of what PAC is building is that mass movement of our people to be able to take power and begin to create the institutions that we need to survive and to also ultimately liberate ourselves.
Beautiful. Well, I really, really thank you, comrades, for joining me tonight to have this little discussion before we screen Dope is Death that's being screened by the Malcolm X grassroots movement. I really respect the work that you all do, and I look forward to continuing to work with you all in the future. Take care, you all. So what's going to happen, everyone, is that I'm going to attempt a little musical break while I log into the screening, and then I'll share my screen, and then we'll all watch Dope is Death.
All right.
I appreciate y'all. Thanks so much, Jomo and Oliver.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Peace.
Peace.
All right. So everybody, let's see. Let me get my music on. Hold on. There we go. This is, let me find it.
All right, y'all. So, welcome to Black Flicks and Chill, organized by MXGM National and the Shakur Squad. Woo woo.
Where are
if you're
you?
on the Shakur Squad, just make some noise one time. We're gonna show y'all some love.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I like the confetti. You can hit that, you know, with emojis, blow up the chat, all that good stuff. So my name is Kana. I'm a member of the Oakland chapter of MXGM. MXGM is a national human rights organization that fights for the land-based self-determination and liberation of Black and African people. And we're organized around 6 core principles. Sanyaka, I did not get a chance. I know them, but run those down for us real quick. Our 6 core principles, please.
I don't know here. 1, 2, 3. I think he's
Get on
muted.
there, Omar. Get on there, Omar.
Self-determination, that's 1. Human rights, that's 2. End the sexism, that's 3. Into freedom for political prisoners, reparations, and I think in the genocide, correct? Right?
Correct,
that's the 3.
Correct.
I mean, that's the 6.
That's it. And not that order, but those go in no uncertain order, right? I appreciate you. All right, y'all, free to land. So tonight we are collectivizing our love. Yes, we are collectivizing our love and action as we fight to free our elder and comrade and the people's healer, Dr. Mtulu Shakur. Dope is Death is the film that we'll be screening tonight. It highlights the work of Dr. Mtulu Shakur that he pioneered at the Lincoln Detox Center, and most notably his revolutionizing of a highly effective treatment method for patients with heroin addiction versus what was being used before, which was methadone, which is, I don't know, sounds a little methy to me, right? So they're putting something that was even more highly addictive as a way to end addiction, and he shifted that. After the film, we will have a panel discussion with Susan Rosenberg, Mtulu Shakur's co-defendant, and as we'll see in the film. With us in the space is MXGM Oakland chapter founding member, longtime prison rights organizer, and founding member of the Black August Organizing Project, as well as someone many of us would also consider a healer of the people, Mama Yana. Welcome. How are you doing today?
Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, it's a little in and out, but yes.
I'm well. How are you doing?
Good. I'm trying to find you on my screen. Where can we see you yet?
I don't know. I can see me.
I can see her.
You can see her? Okay, I don't know why I cannot. All right. Well, welcome.
I don't see you.
Okay, yes, now I see you. Hi. I know Mtulu's work in acupuncture directly influenced your path as a New African medicine woman. Can you tell us a little bit about that, as well as the importance of lifting up Mtulu's work for this new wave of Black healers?
Well, I first became familiar with Mtulu's work and as founder of the Black New African Acupuncture, BANA, and the medical protocols, which are a ear prescription and really just more feeling.
I'm sorry, Mama Yana, your sound is cutting in and out. Is there any way you can?
I post
Mama Yana. Hey, Mama Yana, we no, the sound is really choppy. So I'm not sure if you can do anything. Maybe you can actually just turn off your video and then we can hear your audio for this part. And usually that makes it a little bit better.
No, I think under the bar, and they have this thing attached to my media. It doesn't impact a lot of people. So they cut me off sometime when they go by. Can you hear me okay?
We hear you perfect now.
So I was saying that
Okay. Mama Yana, I'm not sure why they're playing us right now, but it started working well and then we couldn't, but we are gonna, if you know. Okay. Well, I really wanted Mama Yana to get on and speak about this work because this is framing us around what's going on today with the opioid crisis and why many of our healers need to hold up the work of Baba Mtulu Shakur in transforming what healing looks like in our communities.
I just want to say that, I'm sorry, Kana. I just want to say that it's really important that we step up because we can't rely on allopathic medicine to care for our community. And I'm complete. I'm under surveillance, as we all are, but sometimes the surveillance impacts me more. Impacts some of us more than others.
Understood. Yeah, we'll have to get you on in the future, but thank you for that. And we'd love to hear from you also in the chat. Black healers all over the planet need to meet the call to free Mtulu and to heal Mtulu, period. This event is part of a larger Black Love in Action series championed by the Shakur Squad. The kickoff rally was last night. It was absolutely phenomenal. If you missed it, you can check it out on our MXGM National page on Facebook. And tomorrow is Free the Land, Mama Yana. And tomorrow is Arming the Spirit so that we can build up our energy that we need to fight. And on Monday is the vigil at the Board of Prisons in DC, where we continue to advance the call to free Mtulu Shakur. There will also, we can also be able to follow this online by posting our selfies with the hashtag free Mtulu Shakur, as well as we love Mtulu. Also, we have these postcards that you can download in the link tree. Somebody will put that in the chat. And these are cards that just show Mtulu that we're thinking about him, that we're ready for him, that we can't wait to see him come home. So definitely make sure you do that. And yes, make sure you grab all these links that are coming through in the chat. This is our 2020 version of a flyer. So don't miss out on the opportunity to attend the next events, join in on the work, co-sponsor, and let's stay connected. So right now, we know folks might be rushing in from work or all over the place. So we're going to give us a break in the beginning. Folks can grab some popcorn, something, some water, some lemonade, take a bathroom break, and join us in 5 minutes. And we will be introing this film, Dope is Death. Welcome, y'all.
I just want to give a shout out to my family out there. I see y'all. Hey, Kandi. How you doing? Anita. Hey, Judith.
Mama Yana, why don't you talk? I mean, we hear you now. You want to tell us a little bit about what you wanted to say before?
Let's see what happens. No, I was just, well, I think that one of the inspirations that came out of the Lincoln Detox Center that we don't talk about is how it helped perpetuate the natural health movement in the United States, right? And we often don't think about the leadership and changing models and transformation that began in the Black and Brown communities in particular, right? Bringing indigenous and traditional medicine and practices so that we could offset the oppression, economic, and of course, medical oppression and its impacts on our Black and indigenous people in particular in this country. And so that is one of the changes and transformations that came through the Lincoln Detox Center. And it is still a place where people go to learn the NADA protocols.
Right, and it makes me think about, like, what would it mean for his techniques to be so prevalent in fighting the opioid crisis right now with our people?
What would it be if we had this work fully funded as well, right? Or for those of us that became trained in it, because part of the training that Mtulu and the Lincoln Detox did is offer this training basically free to the community, right? So what if we did have detox clinics like we have community acupuncture interspersed in our neighborhoods and on the streets and near the unhoused communities. And as we did that, one of the things I remember about Lincoln Detox is they had a political education component. You couldn't just come and get training in that, in drug, what would you call it? Drug drug, the word is escaping me, but drug
like rehab or recovery.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, detox, right? You couldn't just come get it. You had to be educated in the politics behind it. And that, again, was transformative. I know many people on the left impacted deeply by the teachings that were brought forward, the political education, the wellness education, the traditional, the idea of using traditional medicine. And the leadership that Mtulu brought was really powerful, because not only did he learn acupuncture, he went to China and spent a year with traditional teachers and brought that back as well. And he made stops in places like Angola and other places in South Africa where he also learned traditional practices. And intersected with the movement, because we did. This is not separate from our movement. Saving our lives and moving ourselves out of oppression of the system is intricately connected to how we care for ourselves and our community and our families.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know that, a lot of times people get knowledge and they kind of take it out of the community and they charge, a lot of money, which, they may need to make their living and things like that. But what is your, I guess, you kind of mentioned it around the political education, but his prescription, his treatment plan, included the politics along with the acupuncture. So I'm curious, because I know that that's sort of, a model that you also follow, and sort of it became,
you understand.
It became seen as the most effective method, for detox. Yeah.
If you understand the reason why you're addicted, right? If you understand the conditions that put these in place, if you understand the system and how it operates with institutional racism, right? Then, and how that impacts our social determinants of health, then you have a much, how can I say, stronger opportunity to support you as you have to go through things like withdrawal, right? Because when we talk about detox, we're talking about the physiological impacts of withdrawing. Here comes the BART train now. That's my time to say,
yes.
Free the land.
Thank you. Free the land. Thank you so much for being here. We are kind of at the end of our break, and we're here talking about Baba Mtulu Shakur with Mama Yana, also a New African Medicine woman and healer in our community. And we're just so grateful for y'all being here so that we can continue to advance the call to free Dr. Mtulu Shakur, our healer, the people's healer. So I believe we're back from break, and I'm going to pass this along to Deb, who's going to introduce the film. Thank you.
Free the land and free Mtulu.
Free the land, free Mtulu.
Free it! Greetings, everyone. This is Debbie, Oakland chapter, Malcolm X Grassroots Movement. Glad to have you all here in celebration of Mtulu and in a tsunami wave to try and push the system to pull our Baba out of the clutches of where he is and home. That was a break, believe it or not. And we know it's, folks coming in from work, tried to give you a little time for a bio break and grab something to eat, find a comfy spot. So this film that we're about to watch is by Mia Donovan. It's called Dope is Death, and it was made in 2021. It's the story of how Dr. Mtulu Shakur, stepfather of Tupac, along with fellow Black Panthers and the Young Lord combined community health with radical politics to create the first acupuncture detoxification program in America in the year of 1973. It was a visionary project that was deemed too dangerous to exist by those in power. While watching this movie, here's some things to ponder. One is the reason of why we're here, right? What does it mean in this nation for a Black man to be denied parole after serving a full sentence of 30 years? And then when denied, after having served that time in a vicious prison system, manages to do so without any behavioral incident? What does it mean then after making it 30 years being told that you can't come out and going on 6+ years of having served your sentence and being forced to stay in? Another thing is, think of the heroin crisis the Lincoln Detox Center was addressing.
In this country in almost 50 years. We've got police brutality, a lack of health care, opiate epidemics, and chaos.
It just got out of control.
It captures an important part of New York and American history that hasn't really been told before.
I got used to seeing the addicts.
When we did acupuncture, people got off heroin.
Black Panthers and the Young Lords were the first ones to bring acupuncture to the South Bronx.
Directed by Mia Donovan. Here is Dope as Death.
Am I the only one that can't hear the film?
No, I can't hear it either.
Y'all can't hear it?
No.
I had the sound optimized for the videos, scripted everything.
Don't throw popcorn at the screen. Put it in the chat.
Okay.
I'm thinking.
Did y'all hear it at all?
No, that sometimes when if you're using YouTube or anything else to broadcast, I don't know what medium we're broadcasting over.
Yeah, it was on YouTube, and it is optimized for the sound. I did that part of it.
Sometimes if it's copywritten, they'll take the sound away.
No, hold up. We heard it in the beginning, right? Everyone was hearing.
Yeah, the film starts slow and it starts in the intro.
I think we were hearing.
Yep.
Yeah, so just.
Okay, let me go back to it. Sorry, y'all. Okay. Let me check the volume here. Y'all hear now?
Can see it, but can't hear it.
Right now it's just back on there.
We're not on Facebook Live or anything, right?
Yeah, no one's talking in the.
I don't believe so.
Sunyaka, can you see with your share screen if you somehow disabled the share the sound?
It is. That's off this guy. Nobody's talking right now. It's just background noise.
Oh. Okay.
You then exhale. Okay, Walter, turn your head that way, like you're looking at the hat. I'm going to adjust this one right here, the 11 point. Let me get rid of this. Turn your head that way. There you go, sir. Turn your head the other way. There you go, brother. You get to go.
Hello?
Don't try not to tense up when you breathe in. Just try to relax. Breathe in. And exhale. You right? All right. Turn your head for me. Okay, sir.
I've been doing this for about 7-8 years, maybe more. Maybe I forget. I was doing drugs like this. And it helps me with a lot of things. It calms my breathing. It calms my heart down. It keeps me relaxed. And it just makes me happy. I'm a happy person anyway. And with this, it makes me extra happy. Come on, put the pins in.
Thank you. This helps me with my anger management. Because, Lily, let me talk. This helped me with my anger management. And I found out through taking anger management courses that it's not anger I feel, it's hurt. So it helps me manage the hurt that I have within and keeps me off of, away from alcohol and substance. Right, you don't have to medicate yourself, but this is your actual medicine here. Yes. Come on, hit me up, man. Yes, sir.
Look up a little bit. There you go.
What was in the military? Quite a few years, quite a few battles.
I didn't really know the true history behind it, which was that one of the senior counselors, and I was telling them about acupuncture and stuff, and she came and she said, "Do you know how this really started?" And she was like, "It was the Black Panthers and the Young Lords. They actually were the first ones to bring acupuncture to the South Bronx."
Growing up in the South Bronx, when the heroin epidemic really hit strong, I got used to seeing the addicts, the men nodding on the corners. And so I grew up with that sense. We just didn't drop out of the sky addicted to heroin. We became addicted to heroin because of the situation and our environment exposed us to heroin. You could buy a bag of heroin for $3. So people got addicted to heroin, and then it just got out of control. At one point, there were 100,000 addicts in New York. So I wanted to do something. The need to go into the Panther Party came as I watched and observed the interaction of people, the interaction of party, and what the police was doing at the time. Even if the situation required a verbal interaction, verbal communication, they rather use a baton and use force. This I've seen. I didn't read in this in the evening paper. I've seen this. So I offered my skills in the martial arts to the Panther Party, located in the Bronx chapter on Boston Road. In the community, we structured the free lunch program. Also the daycare center.
The name of this revolutionary puppet show is called The Child, the Man, the Revolutionary, the Panther. Oink, 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 oink. Oink, 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 oink. Oink, oink, oink,
To the United States, we came to learn how to misspell our name, to lose the definition of pride, to have misfortune on our side, to live where rats and roaches roam, to be trained to turn on television sets, to dream about jobs you will never get, to fill out welfare applications, to graduate from school without an education, to be drafted, distorted, and destroyed, to work full-time and still be...
After work at Lincoln Hospital, I would sell my newspapers, my Black Panther Party newspapers. I sold the newspapers across the street from the hospital because that's the closest place, and there were lots of people. There was a lot of people walking back and forth. And on the stoop, every day was this 15-year-old and his buddy, who was about 25 maybe, and they were stomped down heroin addicts. And I kept telling them, you don't want to be addicted to heroin. And let me show you why. Because the system is keeping you, I gave them the whole spiel. System is keeping you down by making sure that you stay addicted and you don't stand up and fight against all the exploitation and horrible conditions that we live in, because you're over here nodding out.
You don't want to fight when you're on heroin. You just stay there and nod yourself into oblivion. During that era, I found that I was very political. I don't know how this happened. Obviously, subconsciously, something was working in me. I was admiring the Panthers. I had already met with Bobby Seale and James Foreman. And I told Bobby Seale I wanted to make a counterpart. I wanted to organize the counterpart to the Black Panthers called the Brown Tigers. He said, son, can I tell you something? We're catching hell being called the Black Panthers. I would suggest that you find another name and work the objective conditions of your country. Try to apply socialism to the objective conditions of your country, and don't try to do what we do. I thought that was a brilliant answer.
Another panelist, Mr. Philippe Luciano, a member of the Young Lords, and I've asked him to speak briefly as to the philosophy of his organization and what he feels its place in the community is. Mr. Luciano.
First of all, the Young Lords are a predominantly Puerto Rican group operating out of East Harlem. Basically, the way we go about mobilizing our people is through serving their needs. That is, if our people need hot water, then we're going to get hot water. If it's shoes on their feet, then we're going to give them shoes, right? And if it's a political campaign that needs to be run, then we're going to run political campaigns. That's basically what the Young Lords are about. In the process of...
I just fell in love with the movement. Once I heard him speak about what we had to do in our community, I wanted to join the movement.
Have you seen the skinny little boy that chases the white ghost at night? Have you seen the little boy? Face puffed up, tracks in his arm, and his mind blown. His mom is somewhere drinking and talking about survival. Pops in jail or downtown in the Y. The little boy chases white ghosts with his friend, and they get high. And they get high. And they get high. Like Cloud 9, where everything is fine.
The fast rise of people's personal economy grew as a result of selling drugs. Qualitatively, that overshadowed living harmoniously amongst each other, which the Panther Party was introducing. So we had to tackle the drugs now.
Yeah, no, that's his thing. I need to press for your money.
At first, we went to those who were distributing the drugs and selling drugs. We asked that they stop. They wouldn't. Then we just kindly removed them out of the community.
It didn't hit the low middle class or middle class thing. It was clearly in the areas of color. If it isn't large enough to get to the influential community, if it isn't a big media story, if it doesn't affect your kid going to school every day because you're in Forest Hills or you're in Bay Ridge, you're in some middle class neighborhood, it's not a big problem. I was with as administrative assistant to John Lindsay when he was mayor from 1966 to 1973, and basically my responsibility was the street.
Blue uniforms that run to the streets like songs, they are to protect white law. They are to have an armed camp attitude, black men. As long as that situation where we can have regular relationship. See another part too, dealing with pigs and police. The pigs is the one who brings heroin in our community. You see, if it wasn't for the pigs, heroin wouldn't be saturated through the black community. But they do. When the police make a big narcotic raid and you get like a kilo of heroin, he would turn in a pound of it, and then he put the other pound that's left back in the community. That's somebody selling for him, and he's selling heroin for the police. That's why when we confiscated the heroin last Friday, somebody from the Post and other news media said that we should have took that kilo of heroin and gave it to the police. We would have gave it to the police at 3 o'clock. At 9 o'clock, we would have been back in home. Pounds to the people, brother. At all.
Believe in our self-defense, not because we like violence. No one likes violence, but that you have to like make a differentiation between the open and direct violence that very often is attributed to revolutionaries, and the type of violence that happens every day on a regular basis among poor people, whether it's the violence of having to go all winter in an apartment that has no heat, or whether it's the violence of having to go to a hospital that doesn't give you service and you end up dying anyway. You don't die with a bullet necessarily, but you die in other ways. That type of violence takes a lot more lives.
We don't want to just have a rally here, but I'm marching to the streets across drugs. They're not going anywhere. We're going to be here until this hospital learns and is put back in the hands of the people. That building was condemned 25 years ago. Condemned because it was unsafe for human habitation. Condemned for rich people and opened up for poor people. That's what always happens.
Young Lords, Black Panthers, workers, and patients who set up a complaint table. So we took complaints to rat bites for babies, lead poisoning, asthma, heroin addiction. They have those 2,000 complaints that we got from the patient work complaint table in their hands. Have done nothing about them.
A group called the Health Revolutionary Unity Movement. Some Blacks, some Puerto Ricans, some Jewish Americans. We all got together essentially when we decided it's time to do something. And we decided, I know this is going to sound crazy, we decided to take over the hospital. It was an occupation that came straight out of the Normandy invasion. Understand, it's a U-Haul truck driven by a friend of ours. The gate rolls up, and we were sitting with our legs open, and there were people, like the guy would sit between us, and it was like a paratrooper assault. I knew that we were ready because I was expecting them to look at me for confirmation. Not one person looked at me. They knew exactly what their roles were. We took it in 7.5 minutes. We secured it in 15. That morning, the Puerto Rican flag is flying over Lincoln Hospital. The cops come. They had more cops than I had ever seen in my life. So they send over their best negotiators, a guy named Sid Davidoff and Barry Goddard.
So I get a call one morning that the Young Lords have taken over the hospital, whatever that means, take over the hospital. The police are ready to move in. They've got hostages. Can we do something about it? One thing to have a demonstration in the street, and you cordon it off, and you have police, and you do what you have to do. This is a hospital where people come who are seriously injured or seriously sick, and they couldn't provide patient care. And we had to draw the line there.
Don't let anybody tell you that there was 1 minute of disruption of the delivery of health care at Lincoln Hospital when the Young Lords took it over. Never. We had our press conference where we said the hospital had been taken over and we were willing to negotiate. These were the demands. Press conference where we said pretty much the hospital had been taken over and we were willing to have received from the patients in the emergency room at our complaint table.
We kept our end of the bargain. We did open a detox center soon thereafter with, as I remember, Puerto Rican administrator, I'm pretty sure.
And that was the beginning of the Lincoln Detox Center.
We've now started the Lincoln Hospital Drug Detoxification Program. We brought hundreds of drug addicts, heroin addicts, came.
First day that we opened up the doors, there were 200.
Walter came in off the street.
And I was in nursing school walking up the block with my ex-wife, and I saw this big Puerto Rican flag across the street where the barber was. So when I told him I was in nursing school, he says, why don't you volunteer? In the beginning, I was just like a translator because all the doctors were white and didn't speak Spanish. And since I had a little experience with nursing school, I went from being a translator to drawing blood. And the clients loved me because they said I had excellent hands. They even said, I wish I would have known you, or you would have been my shooting partner.
This is one of my cards. Does it have my name on it? We used to be at the entranceway, and we had a big box at the entranceway. When the addicts used to come in, we used to say to them, put your weapons here. When you leave, you'll get them back. And of course, this is what they used to do. So they had zip guns, they had knives that were called 007s, they have ice picks, they carried all this stuff because when they were out there in the street, you never know when you were going to get mugged or you actually were going to do the mugging, right?
Eyes are brown, your hair brown, your hands are 5'6", you said, yeah. You haven't had a physical? No test? You know the handicap? Listen, I'm gonna put my name on your card. It's my whole number, all right? If you have any problem where you can't get in there, you call me up, all right?
And then once we had doctors from Lincoln Hospital who said that they were going to be responsible, that's when we brought Mtulu in, okay, because we had a medical director, and we wanted to have a director that had a revolutionary consciousness.
I was just a sister that came to the clinic, was really messed up. I didn't know anything. I was not politically conscious of anything. I was just troubled. I've learned a lot of things as I've been there in terms of helping your people, making it better for your people. I learned about the streets and the drugs to that nature, and what it was doing to our people.
That's why the political classes, the political education classes, we used to call them PE classes, were so important because we gave them the history. We gave them history about what happened in Africa, what happened in China, what happened in Puerto Rico, the political movements that were stopped because of the drugs.
We started realizing a lot more of who we was, thinking about our African roots, realizing that the names that our parents carried were the names of slave masters that our forefathers had. And that's what we used to call them. What was your slave name? And most of us that changed our name wanted to get rid of those slave names. We wanted names that more accurately portrayed who and what we were.
You figure, you've been oppressed all your life, right? So then you wonder where that's coming from, right? But they forget to tell you, right, that the problem really comes from the system. Because who oppresses your mother? Who oppresses your father, right? The system. The system oppresses your father, so therefore they oppress you. When they start oppressing you, like you hanging out in the streets, right? And when the only solution that you have.
I don't know if you've ever seen a drug addict detox, but it is horrible. They have chills, they're sick, they're cold sometimes, they're hot sometimes. It is really, really, it's a horrible. That's why people don't want to get off of drugs, because it's such a horrible experience, the actual body detoxing.
My poem was Jones coming down. Day breaks, got the shakes, nose running, joint dripping, mind slipping, body aches. Jones coming down.
Got an attitude, fighting bad, feeling bad, funeral sad, another 24-hour drag. Shit, I need me some scare. My brother's do-rag, you caught me a transparent bag. You see, cause I'm strung out
right witch, my time is pitch riding the right horse into my main vein. Damn, baby, I got to kill this man.
America's public enemy number one in the United States is drug abuse. In order to fight and defeat this enemy, it is necessary to wage a new all-out offensive.
If you are a heroin addict, you need upwards of $100 a day to buy heroin to feed your addiction. And you will literally do anything to get some heroin to relieve the withdrawal. Nixon was under a lot of pressure to show real evidence that he was cutting down on black street crime. Had you get those people into a program where they are getting methadone every day, they have no withdrawal symptoms. And they have no need to go out and steal or hold somebody up at gunpoint. So there's a direct correlation. The more people on methadone, the lower the crime rate.
It's impossible to get access to the person on a regular basis. The very fact that it's addicting is one of its real attributes. When the person is on methadone, he has to come back every day.
Methadone itself in 1970 is not a new drug. What was novel was its use as a maintenance drug, meaning that someone who used to use heroin several times a day indefinitely could use methadone once a day indefinitely. They would be maintained on it, not detoxified with it. If you're coming from a place that is very critical of federal, state, and local government and how it treats Black people, brown people, poor people, Asian people, you understandably might come to regard methadone maintenance with some suspicion because it is regulated and in large part dispensed by the government.
I'm a Puerto Rican, and we came here and we went to fight for the United States. If we can fight for them, why can't they fight for us Vietnam better?
I got hooked in Vietnam, with drugs. So then after I came from over there, I couldn't get any jobs over here. So I went to the welfare center and they told me, you have to get into a methadone program. And if you don't get into a methadone program, you won't be able to get help.
What's methadone doing for you? Is it helping you?
Getting me high, that's all.
What they saw was that was just replacing one addiction with another. And what they wanted to do at Lincoln Detox is have a chemical-free way of detoxing heroin, and also a methadone for that matter.
By 72, we started looking around for an alternative. We no longer wanted to use methadone. Dr. Mtulu Shakur, if it wasn't for his leadership, I don't think we ever would have done what we did. And he was the one who found this article in the newspaper
that an acupuncturist who was treating someone with respiratory problems, who also happened to be addicted to opium, had found that by stimulating the lung point of the ear, did not only help the respiratory problem, but also took away the withdrawal symptoms of opium.
So there was 6 of us there, and we each would read a paragraph. And when we read that article, everybody sort of light was turned on, and we said, wait, why don't we do this?
When I walked into the program, I was 17 and a half years old, or 18. And I walked into the program and I saw this old man with needles in him.
And I said, these people are really crazy in here. They sticking needles in folk and that kind of thing. I need to get up out of here. But I stayed because I wanted to get off of the drugs. So that was the first time I saw acupuncture. I stayed in the treatment program. And as I stayed in the treatment program, I began to politicize myself. I began to educate myself and study, about movement stuff and politics and philosophies, etc. Shortly thereafter that, I began to study acupuncture under Dr. Mtulu Shakur.
When the patients or victims would come up, we would say, well, listen, we're not going to give you no methadone today, but what we're going to do is massage your feet, massage your back, and massage your ears. And we're going to use our finger. So before we even got needles, people would come up to the Bronx, these hardened over victims. We would massage their ears and massage their hands and their legs, and we would stand there with our fingers in their ears or in the different points, and we do deep breathing, and they'd fall right out to sleep. Just relax, and then the next day they'd be back on that treatment. We're detoxifying people off of and cocaine and methadone, acupressure, a lot of love, a lot of commitment to it. It was some of the most rewarding times of our lives, and it was just great. It was just great, spirited, and we did begin to get the needles and learn needle insertions and how to deal with us very well.
I'm gonna move here. Breathe in, breathe out.
Can you touch your head to the left one? Okay. Breathe in, out.
Please get your head started. Just breathe in. Exhale. Breathe in. Breathe in. Breathe in. Please share with them, Malaya, what these 5 points do.
The first point, which is the Shivman, right here, opens up your spirit gate. The second point, sympathetic, right here, has to do with calming your nerves and dilating blood vessels. Third point, kidney, up here, it has to do with fear. Your liver, which is right here, that deals with anger. And last but not least, right inside the ear, that's your lung, deals with sadness and grief.
So the whole purpose of the collective is to empower individuals so that they're able to take care of their family, and that's the major thing. If I can take care of me, if I can take care of my mama, my daddy, my sister, my brother, and then they can reach out and take care of some other folks and we can do some more stuff. That is the way it's supposed to go. That's what this collective is all about. So on the grassroots level, one at a time, each one teach one. You are your brother and sister's keeper.
We started with 1 point and we used an electrical stimulator.
They tried the acupuncture and they saw that it did take the edge off. And so they kept on coming every single day.
And before you know it, they were so relaxed and sedated that within a week or so, they would detox. So we said, well, we have to stop using the machine and start using more needles.
I remember when we did acupuncture and people got off heroin, and to see them moving on, it was like a joy. It was like seeing people being born. And of course, the people who pushed methadone were not happy.
Everything that we did was based on this slogan of love the people. So you love the people, you love yourself, you love your family, and you don't want to see them living in this horror. So that's why you're working so hard to make all these changes in the society.
So we read all the material that was available to us. We read it. The Red People's Army had all these techniques that they were using. We just didn't read the red book and became political. We read especially the medical books.
Before the establishment of the People's Republic, medical services were almost non-existent here, as in most agricultural areas throughout China. Chairman Mao insisted that in health and medical work, the stress should be on the rural areas. The primary motivation for becoming a barefoot doctor must be to serve the people.
We wanted to create a medical cadre just like they did in China.
I helped the revolution. I helped the revolution because I knew how. I knew how to do it.
Mario Wexu and his father Oscar, who ran the Quebec Acupuncture Institute in Montreal, gave us 6 scholarships to go to their institute and become acupuncturists.
My father, Oscar Wexu, he learned acupuncture in Europe and France. And he brought acupuncture here when we came here originally at the end of 1951. But he wasn't doing acupuncture in the beginning because he was afraid they'd lock him up. They think he's some kind of a cuckoo, lock him in a cuckoo house, in an asylum. So who's this crazy guy putting needles in people? In the beginning, he was doing just Chinese massage. And then we used to get all these lumberjacks. So I'm breaking my thumbs on these guys. Lumberjacks who are strong like hell. Each massage treatment was like a wrestling match with the devil. And so I told my father at that time, why don't we give him acupuncture instead of breaking your thumbs on these guys? So in the beginning, my father didn't want to. As soon as he did one person, the next day he came with 8 people. And a week later, there was 30 people, and within a month, there was people lining up out in the street. Became very popular in the acupuncture. So my father started a school, and we started teaching people. And so me, my father, my sister, my brother-in-law started working, and we were doing 350 people a day. And we had a 6-month waiting list. You have to understand the situation in Quebec at that time, before we had the Medicare card. The doctor didn't treat anybody poor. The poor were really abused. So he wanted to do acupuncture to help the poor people. Now we have the Black Panthers and the people wanting acupuncture. In Montreal, so you think the people wanted acupuncture. We didn't force it on them. The people wanted it.
A ver, déjala quietecita para cuando venga Master Juan me diga.
You're getting much better. I like it. I like it. The kid delivers good. You're good. Breathe in. Exhale. Breathe in. Exhale. You let it out. Breathe in. Let it out. Exhale.
I'm a drug addict. I've been a drug addict. I'm 31 years old. I've been a drug addict 15 years. I used to shoot heroin. I track marks. Let's see. Are you relaxed? I'm very relaxed. Before I came here, I was depressed. I had anxiety. And then because the acupuncture and, has helped me to, I'm like happy now, I feel relaxed, I feel calm.
Take a breath in. Take a breath in. Exhale.
Thank you.
I was a drug user for many, many years. I was in and out of jail. I was on the streets with the whole
the whole shabazz thing that comes with it, with the violence, with the suffering, with the pain. It wasn't until actually one day walked through 138th Street over there on 3rd Avenue, and I was walking, and I somehow came across this building that I seen people going in there, and I asked what that was. And they told me, well, this is a Lincoln Recovery Center. It's actually a program. And I was like, you know what? I desperately need a program right now in my life. And I walked in there, and I was, exposed to acupuncture and to, that was my first real taste of holistic health. It was actually great that I was receiving acupuncture treatments every day, sometimes twice a day. And then I decided to get off methadone. I was on methadone for 15 years, and it was acupuncture and learning about Tai Chi and Qigong and how to do deep breathing, and also being surrounded by people who supported me, and that I was able to change my life. If you go straight down, so you do Shinmen, kidney is at the base. See where the both edges touch pretty much? At the base right there, that's your kidney. So,
I'm ready when you're ready. My name is Mtulu Shakur. Well, I think it's important to realize that the pioneers are always the ones targeted as the fools and the naysayers and all the rest. Mtulu was our leader. He was one of the most vocal activists in the community at the time. If it wasn't for Mtulu, maybe we would have never had the acupuncture program.
He helped to heal people. He liked healing people. He was good at it. There's no doubt about that. But I think he used it also as a political tool. They gave him power. They gave the people also power. Maybe also gave him a following. I don't know. Maybe gave him more of a following. I don't know. Yeah, I didn't want to hear anything about politics when I was teaching. Not politics, was love and healing people. That's all that mattered for me. That's all. I never discussed politics with them. I didn't even know them. I didn't even know they were Black Panthers for 5 years after I stopped teaching them. I didn't know anything about that.
And we got the people who we detox and the community involved in political work. So they all became activists.
People around the world are picking up the gun. Run, Rocky, run, Rocky, run, run, run.
We had all these clients, ex-clients. They were no longer clients. They were ex-clients, part of the movement, protesting the inequality of police brutality, injustice in the courthouse.
People kill the rich, free the poor. We're going to try to wake up the people what we are going through. We're going to try to tell people there's only blacks and Puerto Ricans in prison. And the white man today is poor. Because you don't see your fault. Because I'm not my person.
So I remember one demonstration that we had in front of, I think it was Citibank on 138th Street. There had to be at least 500 people in the street. In the street, we closed the street down. Traffic couldn't move. So we became an issue in the South Bronx and a threat to the establishment. But before they came to attack us, they attacked the Doctors Collective, which was basically a collective of white doctors at Lincoln Hospital who were very active, who were very political, and who actually had been supporting the movement, especially the Young Lords movement, as well as the Black Panther movement, by donating money, by paying rent for some of the offices that we had. They would lend us their cars. So when they attacked, in the New York Times, they attacked the Doctors Collective and they called them Marxists, Feminists, Communists, those kinds of words. I knew that our days were counted.
When you're in the South Bronx, you either get activists or you get the hell out or you get hurt. Black, white, Puerto Rican, young and old, all working together, which is what I want to see in our society.
Spent a lot of time with Richard Taft. He was one of the doctors that really did care about the revolutionary ideas that we had and was committed to the detox program.
Richard Taft may have looked like he was the leader. Obviously, he looked like the leader because he was MD and he was white. And people thought that he was the head. That was their mistake. And he wasn't born in the South Bronx or some other ghetto. He came from a family that had connections and stuff. So I always question who killed him. I don't think he killed himself. I don't know how we will ever prove that since so much time has gone by.
At that particular time, the administration of the hospital was complaining about the Lincoln detox. They wanted to come in and they really wanted to control our program, which meant that they wanted audits and they wanted people coming in and observing, and they want to fire people,
Because they were threatening us with closing down the program. And so we went to the corporation, and the element of surprise has always been on our favor. So we got there super early. We locked out the employees and everybody who came to do business that day. Then we sat down and Mtulu negotiated with the Health and Hospital Corporation what we were going to do with the program. We didn't want to put anybody in position of leadership, because history had already told us that when you put a leader up in front of to run the show, they just bump off the leader, and then the movement falls apart. So we didn't want to put one face up front. And who was the leader? Well, that was their job to figure it out, but we weren't going to tell them who the true leader was. And I would think that that gave us a few more years.
Mtulu was involved in a lot of different things. He was received by the Chinese government. He was involved in the Republic of North Africa.
The big difference with the RNA, the Republic of New Africa, and the Black Panther Party was they were talking about land and independence clearly. We were saying, the Republic of New Africa, that this land should be allocated to us, and reparations funds to build this land and to build our nation should be given to us. It was always clear that that wasn't going to happen, that this government wasn't going to just say here.
And also, these people who were young, arrogant, sometimes cockish, and that rubbed them the wrong way also. And we're supposed to be subservient. We're not supposed to be developing programs. We're not supposed to be discovering new ways to treat something. We're supposed to follow. That was not acceptable. So from the mentality of the Herbert Hoover type people, I could see how they would want to keep an eye on him. I really understand that. And I understood that at the time.
FBI memos made public today show that the late J. Edgar Hoover ordered a nationwide campaign to disrupt the activities of the New Left without telling any of his superiors about it. The FBI campaign lasted from 1968 until...
The FBI undertook a program in 1968 to harass and destroy New Left political organizations whose views the federal police agency disagreed with. The purpose of the program would be to expose and disrupt the New Left.
In 1977, we returned with our acupuncture degrees So Mtulu decided we'll open up a school and we'll call it Lincoln Detox Acupuncture School. We did it. Now, do we have permission? No. Were we going to ask for permission? No, because they would have said no anyway. We just did it.
I was in the first class of students, and we started at Lincoln Hospital. Lincoln Detox and Mtulu and other people had built a relationship to Mario Wexu in Montreal. I mean, he came and we had training it was a 3-year program that we all went through.
It was always steeped in the struggle for human rights and the struggle for healthcare for all, and in the struggle to really understand the system we were living under and what it was doing to people. China was still doing just tours that had to be arranged politically.
And of course, they're Maoists, but they had no idea what communism was like. That's why eventually they wanted me to bring him as a guide to China. Because they get money from the government, the grants from the federal government, to go to China to see the acupuncture. But I told him, Mao Zedong don't give a damn about you guys. You use you black guys as publicity, you don't give a shit.
The CIA follows around China. It was a very bizarre, because I actually thought, this is 1977, I thought China was, communist and progressive and the American government. I got it. It was really clear.
My background is that I am the only son of a blind mother. To me, that I struggle to get basic needs of any you can say disabled individual. I had to learn how to get a welfare slip and fill it out and get online. I had to learn how to get a social security card, help her fill it out and get online. I had to learn how to wait in the emergency room for some services to come to a person who didn't have the insurance cards to get particular medical services in life. So I say that my willingness and commitment to struggle is not necessarily based upon the ideology that I learned from a particular book. It comes from the fact that I had to struggle with her, and with her and in these particular institutions in the community was a lot of other figures. Most of these people happen to be black people trying to get meaningful minimum services from the state in order to survive, basically. I think that I don't necessarily consider that revolutionary in seeing overturning such a system. I do see it as building an aggressive resistance to oppression.
So this is not in China in 78. They were already making plans to get rid of it. There we go. The two I brought this back and the acupuncture chart right here from China, 1978.
I remember when Koch actually sent the riot police to the entranceway of our clinic. We went to go to work and there were padlocks. And so we didn't know what was going on. When they closed the clinic, it was like we had to fence for ourselves.
Corporate doctors at that time saw everything that we were doing as a threat. Because what we were saying is, and the other thing that's so important is that we were calling it free quality healthcare for all. That was the bottom line for all of this, that we demanded free quality healthcare for all. That was the first call for free healthcare, which is now everybody's talking about. It's a big deal, but that was the first time in the 1960s and early 70s, and it came from that same group of people.
And so when I say there were two detox programs, it was the first one, which was the People's Program. And then after that, it changed. It was no longer any politics. It just became the Liquid Detox Program under Michael Smith, and there was no politics. That was the end of the political education. And people went their own way. Mtulu created Banner, and he moved into Harlem.
To create a new clinic was really the only alternative in order to keep the ideas of the project and program alive and to keep having a space to be able to treat people. But it became, then it was a private enterprise, right? So the funding for it completely changed, and access to people who really needed it also changed. And it then became a political project, which was the Black Acupuncture Association of North America.
This was where the school and the clinic was housed. This is what I think in the Mtulu's mind, is that he wanted to create Banner to serve the whole person. The drug addiction thing, that was great because that just really opened them up to the idea of acupuncture. But it's more of a holistic thing that all parts, we need healing on so many different levels. You know, it was like a real family thing after a while when I came in Banner, because it was like, I was like comfortable with everybody. Everybody knew me, you know, and I just seen a good thing that was going on. And I seen that I was starting to feel better, getting stronger about myself, you know, and having better decisions.
They were treating everything. And I think what I enabled them to do was to have a little bit of medical oversight. In terms of, is there certain things that they really shouldn't be treating or needed some other kind of intervention? That really didn't happen very much. Then they had started the school, which it really populated this entire city with community-based acupuncturists. 2 to 3 of the people started their own schools that still exist. And they did all this before there was any New York State recognition that they could do it. It was completely in your face saying, we are doing this. It's for the people, you know, see, what do you have to say about it? And then they began to do the work with the state to recognize non-MD acupuncturists. That was the first. And now, of course, they're everywhere.
So I was with my Kung Fu brother, and we were selling incense and oils on the street corner in downtown Brooklyn. A woman comes along and she says, a Black acupuncture school opened up in Harlem. And she said that, a Black acupuncture school. I couldn't believe it. Opening up in September in Harlem. So I followed up. I went up to the school.
Almost 3 years ago, President Carter
came down to this very spot.
What are you going to do?
Wait a
What are you going to do?
It is 3 years and nothing has been done.
We know
The
that.
plan,
It's written everywhere. We
please,
better not
wait a
do
minute.
it.
Right now in Congress,
What are
is
you
some,
going to do for us?
I'm trying to tell you. I am trying to tell you, I can't do a damn thing for you if I don't get elected.
No, but what are you going to do anyway? We'll make
I
promises.
just finished telling you and you wouldn't stop talking to listen.
I was part of an organization that was called the May 19th Communist Organization. And May 19th Communist Organization came under complete attack in the 1980s, early 1980s and 1981. It wasn't just us. There were people around the country who were involved in supporting revolutionary nationalist Black politics.
I remember telling Mtulu this, and I didn't know it would be a prophecy. Mtulu was that person that could be out. We could be out at the after hours show. We could be partying all night. He would come home and maybe get an hour's sleep and get up and take a shower. And he was on the case. Nothing stopped him from taking care of his business. And he did too much. And I used to tell him all the time, I was like, Mtulu, if you do everything, nobody else is going to know how to do shit. So they didn't do it. They didn't show up, and instead you're doing it. So you're doing everything. But what happens if something happens to you? Who's going to do it? And that's exactly what happened. It was like, oh my God, because he had his hands in helping everybody.
I think they looked at him on all the levels that he was dealing with, politically, socially, medically, etc. That when they looked at him, they say the problem, this guy here, he's got too much influence in too many areas. He's potentially a leader. We need to get rid of him.
I had just gone to bed, cleaned up my room, my space, got my baby together, laid down. About 2 hours later, I heard this boom. They had blown the door off, the hinges out. They just blown it off with some apparatus. And when I got up to look, I got up and I was on the 4th floor and looked over the railings. All I could see was those black SWAT caps and the lights on the end of their guns pointing at me coming up the stairs, you know, in the dark, because they had cut the lights and everything. It was harrowing.
It's a very strange atmosphere in the street. And I was going to work, and there was nobody on the street. This was in the morning. Normally would have been a busy day on the street in Harlem. And as I am walking toward the clinic, once again, I look up, and there are FBI Black Ops people on the roofs of all around the clinic in Harlem. And as I'm walking, there is literally a tank rolling down the street, coming in the wrong direction.
And today, 7 people from the radical underground were indicted in the robbery murder of a Brinks truck in which 3 were shot to death.
Subsequent investigations centered here on this Harlem townhouse, which back then housed an acupuncture clinic. Mtulu Shakur, head of the acupuncture clinic, and FBI reports say the suspected ringleader in the Nyack robbery. But by the time they came to arrest Shakur, he left. One defendant was Cassie Boudin, veteran radical, fugitive. Others came from exotic groups like the Black Liberation Army, the Republic of New Africa. Showing something police had never seen before. White and black criminals working together. Whites renting the cars, blacks doing the jobs.
Among those indicted today for murder and robbery in the Brinks holdup, Catherine Bodine, Nathaniel Burns, David Gilbert,
Samuel Brown, Judith Clark.
I was tortured for about 6 hours when I was captured. I still got burns on the scars from where they burned me, pulled my toenail out, flushed my head in the toilet. That was their way of waterboarding me, just sticking my head in the toilet and flushing it.
I was involved in supporting the politics of this whole group of people. And so I, along with many other people, were targeted in this federal RICO conspiracy case. And I was placed on the FBI most wanted list in 1982, at the end of 1982. And because I didn't believe that it would be possible to fight this case, I went underground and was being hunted and looked for with shoot to kill orders by the FBI for 2.5 years.
My husband was a physician. He was actually working at Lincoln Hospital at the time when the FBI arrested him. And he was brought before a grand jury, and they said that he was accused of treating one of the people who had been wounded in the aftermath of the Brinks case. And he wouldn't talk, so he stayed in jail. He refused to collaborate. So he was in jail for about a year, and then they indicted him as an accessory after the fact of the robbery. And at that point, he went underground.
Besides the people charged in the actual crimes, the grand jury has jailed 6 others, associates and friends of the defendants, jailed them not because they were involved in the robberies, but because they wouldn't furnish hair and handwriting samples.
In 82, that's when I got visits from the FBI. They brought me into the courts. So they say, would you like to answer questions? And I said, I don't know anything. I'm, just a patient. And I said, well, I was told to take the 5th. I took the 5th. They said that, no. Either you tell us what we want to hear, or you go to jail. And at that point, I took the position of going to jail. I said, I have to live in the community. I have a child. I have family. I don't know what's going on. And at the time, they incarcerated me.
My husband was jailed for resisting the grand jury, because he was a friend of Mtulu's. And there must have been surveillance before that.
Mtulu and I was on the same case. One of the charges that I was charged with was helping to liberate Mtulu Shakur and being involved in expropriation of armored trucks. And I was given, like I said, 40 years on one and 25 to life on the other. I won in court after 33 years, if you could count all that a win.
We were living in a revolutionary period. So to stick up a bank, to feed the people, or to build a people's army, that had happened all over the world. From the People's Republic of China, Russia, Vietnam, that was part of the movement. That was part of the liberation struggles of the world. So we weren't creating that situation. We were just imitating the situation. We were part of a world revolution. I didn't know the details. You know what I mean? I knew what had happened after the fact. It wasn't meant to be a violent overthrow, The Wells Fargo heist, which was done by a Puerto Rican militant. Not a bullet was shot or a drop of blood. The Brinks was a different story.
Ben was arrested in 1984 in New Jersey. It was very ironic in so many ways because after I was convicted of possession of weapons in New Jersey and given a 60-year prison sentence for that, the charges in the the case itself, which had set in the underground to begin with, was dropped for lack of evidence. And I think that's important because that also speaks to what kind of evidence there was or wasn't against Dr. Shakur. So the first 11 years I was in prison, I was either in small group isolation, solitary confinement, lockdown, or maximum security. Then after the first decade, I did make it into population where I became an organizer once again and became a peer advocate and an AIDS advocate and a prison legal human rights advocate, which is really difficult to do in prison, but we managed to do it.
One of the men suspected of taking part in the 1981 armored car robbery has been captured in California.
Shakur's 4.5-year flight ended in this residential neighborhood of West Los Angeles. He was still running, authorities said, when he was literally tackled from behind by 2 New York police officers who had chased him across the years and miles.
They charged me with 6 armored truck robberies, the liberation of Mtulu Shakur, using illegally gained funds to finance camp for Black children in Mississippi, and to put a acupuncture clinic in Harlem. Part of the so-called enterprise I was accused of financing with illegally gained funds.
Myself and some other people, we are unindicted co-conspirators, so they said that we were involved in it. They wanted to lock us up and kill us too, and they attempted to do those things, but anytime you have a movement and a struggle that's going on, they're going to highlight specific people. As you say, you heard him say, they highlighted him because he started a clinic.
Our children who were targeted and harassed, who were followed, who were, put in fearful situations because, like myself, I was clandestine for many years and on the run. And so my daughter and my sons were always followed and go into their schools. And so they knew the reality of what this is. Tupac wasn't angry just to be angry. I think his mother's life as a member of the Panther 21 and the Panther situation, his growing up in Lincoln Hospital with us, and that whole struggle with the Republic. He grew up around dope fiends all his life, and he grew up in the tension of what we were going through with these various counterintelligence operations. In a better world, we could have done better with that anger. In a better world, in a better circumstances. But I think he did the best that he could.
Okay, we're gonna do the same exact thing on the other side. I want to make it so they don't come out. Turn your head for me. My liver. Deep my lungs.
It stimulates the point that I put this into your ear. I'm sending a message to your brain because every part of your ear represents the inside of you. So when we're stressed out and we're worried, we get very tight, the muscles get very tight, you're able to breathe, you get angry, you get upset very easily. This will relax you. You'll see in 10 minutes, and you're going to feel like, wow,
Was there medicine in here? No, the medicine is already in your body.
Right.
This is just releasing it into your organs, increasing the blood flow to your brain.
We see progress in people's lives where before I would see the pain that people go through drug use. I would see the suffering, but I felt at that time there was nothing I could do. I would just either witness the pain and act like it didn't happen and just keep moving and keep getting high myself because I had my own pain. And today, regardless of my own pain, I tried my best to make sure that I ease the pain that others have. And today I see that. I see that when people walk through these doors and they're in pain and they go, you gotta get that. When I see people in pain and they come out of here feeling better, then I know I did my job. I know that I did something today that made a difference in somebody's life. And that's the most important thing to me.
It's on you, brother Byron.
Omar. Okay. We're waiting on Omar.
Hello? Hey, so he's having a technical problem. He's gonna have to turn his device off and back on.
Okay.
Sanyaka, can you
Go ahead.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So we are now get this here together. So now we're going to be we're joined by Susan Rosenberg, who is in the movie. And I'm so happy and honored that she's able to join us. Get Omar to stop sharing it.
I'm back now.
You back? Okay.
Sorry. Yeah. I do want to apologize. I had some troubles with my mouse. I don't know. These things always happen at the right time, right? At the wrong time. So yes, very grateful and honored to have Susan Rosenberg here with us. As you saw in the movie, she was a co-defendant in the Brinks Nyack case with Baba Mtulu. She's a human rights activist, prisoner rights activist. She is author of a book, American Radical, a political prisoner in my own country, which details her 16 years in federal prison, more than 5 times the average for the crime in which she was charged. She was released from prison in 2001 by President Clinton on an executive clemency order in his last day in office. Since her release date in 2001, Susan has been a speaker, educator, a lecturer to young people, graduate students, activists, and has continued her work in around issues of women in prison, political prisoners, and prison reform and social justice activism. Susan, a pleasure to have you today.
My honor and my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay, so we're just going to get started right away with some questions. A lot of these questions were kind of addressed in the movie, but can you tell us a little bit about your background, your political work, and how you became acquainted with Dr. Mtulu Shakur?
Yeah, really, I can. I watching the movie again. I've seen it before, but watching it again, I was just so struck by how rooted in the community and the efforts that were going on at the time, and what a threat they were to all of the state and what the state was doing. And it's a little bit overwhelming to once again see all of that imagery and that history. I'm a member of the family and friends of Dr. Mtulu Shakur, which is a political and legal group of folks who've been working on his case and trying to do organizing and legal support around his case for quite a long time. I've been involved for the last 10 years. After I got off of parole, I was able to then, get into the work. Dr. Shakur has probably been one of the most important people to me in my political and personal life since 1973. So we're going on decades now. I was part of the radical and revolutionary movement of the 1970s, the late 60s, but really the 1970s, and met Mtulu. We've tried to figure out when we first met, and we can't remember. So that's, I don't know what kind of statement that is, but it was in a number of different places where our paths crossed. And as in 1973, I went to Lincoln Detox to volunteer there before I fell in love with acupuncture itself. But that's one place where I first met Mtulu. And then I met Mtulu also in the political arena because I was involved with the people who were in the anti-imperialist left, who had been supporting political prisoners and fighting political repression, people who had come out of defending the Panther 21 and others as the movement of resistance grew and people were arrested and fell during that time. So, and I probably one of the most vivid early memories that I have is that Dr. Shakur invited a number of us to come to Twyman Myers' funeral. And Twyman Myers was a soldier in the Black Liberation Army who was killed by the police in New York City in 1973. And there was a community funeral and commemoration of him in Harlem, in Spanish Harlem. And Mtulu said it would be really important if some white people came to support and to be present at this funeral. And so a number of us went to it. And not unlike when the clinic was attacked by the FBI and the Joint Terrorist Task Force, the funeral was under surveillance by the FBI. And it was one of the heaviest, certainly in my life up to that point, experiences that I had ever seen, where children were coming off buses from the East to go to this funeral and to, show support. Little children all coming off these school buses with FBI sharpshooters ringing the buildings to, at this funeral. And so I met Mtulu in what were very extreme circumstances over and over again, because also at Lincoln Detox, the stakes were very high in terms of trying to provide, and it's very well documented in the film, so I'm not going to go all into that, but it really was about healthcare was a human right, and people were very clear that what was going on at that time was a genocidal and chemical warfare attack on the Black and brown Puerto Rican and poor communities in all over New York, but in the Bronx. And so there was an intensity of commitment and work, and always at the core, there was this idea of resistance to oppression. So I met Mtulu under those different circumstances, and I think he also, Mtulu was an internationalist, and he was a revolutionary nationalist, and he was a fighter for freeing the land and independence of an independent Black nation. He was also an anti-imperialist and an internationalist, and he built bridges with multiple communities wherever he was in every way that he could. And he really struggled with us in the white left to recognize that solidarity was really key, and that, but it was about action and not just what you said. And so he worked with us and organized us to support self-determination for Black people in general as a whole, and also the new African independence movement. And so I knew Mtulu over the course of my whole political life. And so that's how I met him.
Thank you for sharing that, and I can certainly understand how over time there was a lot going on, and that you get certain details, but that was very thorough. So speaking of that time, you came of age in the 60s during the time of mass organization, demonstration.
The 70s, really.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, but you're a young baby boomer. That's right, a young baby boomer.
Yeah.
So, a lot of urban rebellions leading from the 60s to the 70s, coming right after the Bunchy Carter, John Huggins situation, Fred Hampton, all in the same year, the Panther 21. How did you all present? Was it necessary to present the the detoxification clinic to talk about the relevancy of that during that time? Because I would think that, from the assault from the government, it would seem that the establishment of a detox center was like a mundane task, something not necessarily connected to politics. Can you speak a little bit how you saw its relevancy at that time, and how it was seen in the community, and how it did address the spirit of the times? That's a lot of stuff.
So yeah, let me sort of take it one by one. I mean, I think it was Cleo that talked in the film about the fact that this was healthcare, and health was a human right, and it was free, and people needed that healthcare in order to both survive and to develop, and then to be able to resist. And there was a genocidal assault going on in New York City that was citywide. That was a drug addiction. It was drugs that were flooding the community. And in order to organize, there was no way to organize without taking head on the role that drugs were playing in the community. And I think, we didn't have the term COINTELPRO in 1973 and 74. It wasn't, it hadn't been discovered and been exposed in those years. but there was this atmosphere and a feeling, and in reality, a war that was going on. And so that was really being waged against the most radical elements in the Black community, in the Puerto Rican community, in the white left. And so dealing with drugs was crucial to being able to have any kind of successful organizing campaign. And I think connected to that, the second part of your question, is that in the community, and again, I think Walter Bosque talks about this in the film, that the political organizing that went on around the clinic itself was really critical to its appeal and its growth, because giving people an empowered narrative about what their own experience in their life was, understanding the system, understanding drugs, understanding poverty and why there were all the things that people were facing, empowered people, gave people a strength, a healing that was crucial. So it was extremely relevant. Dope is death was the slogan that was, the overall overarching idea. And the political education was very also anti-imperialist, in the sense that the war in Vietnam was still going on, and the veterans that were coming back from the war were coming back drug addicted, and all of us were opposed to the war. So there was an ability to make political and personal and medical and spiritual connections that were embodied in that effort, and it was amazing. I can no longer hear you. Not hearing you.
Okay.
Okay. Now I can hear you.
I don't know what's going on here. Mama Yana spoke to this earlier, so maybe this is a continuation of those same imperialist forces. I don't know. But thank you for answering that. You really did answer my third question too. But we all know, a lot of us on the left, we support Mtulu. We think that Mtulu represents, he wants to advance the interests of he's a human rights activist, and he wants to advance the interests of Black people. But when you search Mtulu's name on YouTube, the first thing that pops up is an FBI series, TV documentary series about what it actually is. It's titled, what is it titled? Under Fire, Death of the Black Liberation Army. So this is the first thing that pops up. It has almost 8 million views. And this show reenacts notorious crimes and criminals. And in this particular episode, it portrays Mtulu, as a criminal, and the BLA as a criminal organization. What are your thoughts around this misrepresentation of Mtulu, and even the May 19th communist organization, and just our movement in general, and how it's been characterized, in the 60s and the 70s?
Well, that's what they do, right? That's what they do. They criminalize and they dehumanize, and they call people who are taking certain kind of active resistance to the system terrorists. I think this is one of the oldest methods that any state has at its disposal. And if it was the 50s, it would have been communists. If it was the 60s, it was violent criminals and hippies. So I think the idea that we were terrorists is a red flag, is a label that, and I think that it was imperative that the state criminalize and attack and call people who we're not operating in the nonviolent framework, right? So if you are no longer accepting that the only way to struggle for social justice or for change or to resist poverty and oppression and white supremacy through nonviolent means, if you're going outside those boundaries, then it becomes imperative for the state to attack that whole grouping of people. And they did a really great job of it, you know. And because it's complicated to explain what the right to self-determination is, that includes right to self-determination up to and including the right to armed struggle, without understanding both that the struggle for land is a national liberation struggle, and that we're not going to accept the boundaries as defined by the state. Those forces had to be destroyed, you know, and that was an even deeper part of what the COINTELPRO program was about. And so I think, yeah, I mean, I haven't seen that particular program, but you know, I know that this is very much what the state's efforts have been all along. And you know, to this day, the Federal Bureau of Prisons and the United States Parole Commission, which are the two agencies directly responsible for Mtulu's continuing incarceration, consider his speech to be a reason not to allow him to be released. So this is a continuum from 1975 to the very present.
And I might add that settlers, they have no problem with justifying the use of violence, which brings me to my next question. In recent news, the Republican National Committee passed a resolution stating that the January 6th Capitol attack, where I think 5 people were murdered, hundreds were injured, it was an act of legitimate political discourse. And, you know, we kind of see this continuously starting from 1776, you know, westward expansion, you know, annexation of Latin American countries, the continued political intervention. You know, white settlers have continuously justified the use of violence as legitimate political discourse. And there seems to be a double standard. Some examples of this are, you know, the lynch mobs, the Proud Boys, just in recent situations. How do you view the work of the BLA? And you already kind of spoke to this, the Weather Underground, you know, in the context of legitimate political discourse in comparison to some of these groups, you know, these white vigilante groups and things like that. Because how do you see some of the similarities and strategies and some of the political differences?
Well, you know.
Because a lot of people, you know, kind of, you know, convolute the two. You know?
Yeah, well, I haven't actually heard that much, other than historically saying that, you know, anybody who uses violence is the same, right? There's no nuance in American politics that recognizes differences of strategy and tactics and goals. So, I mean, look, I would say that, you know, the United States is a white settler colony. And, you know, when now we're saying that the United States, the historical development of the United States is really based on genocide and slavery, that has real meaning. And so the struggle against white supremacy and white supremacist terror has necessitated self-defense and resistance, right? And so that has been a thread of resistance from the beginning of kidnapping to the destruction or the utter genocide of Native Americans in the U.S. So there has always been two stories here. There's never been one story. So the fact that look, when I heard that the people from January 6th were being charged with sedition, very few, there are very few cases of sedition in the United States, the use of that indictment. And yet they are getting bail. They're getting bail while they're being charged with sedition. Well, the Puerto Rican independence movement was charged with sedition, and they spent 35 years or more in prison for the actions that they took. So there is, I don't think, I'm not sure if that, it's hard for me to think of this as a useful way to sort of analyze the society we're in, because there is this, white power runs the country.
Yeah, so I would like to thank you for your work, and I appreciate your responses to the question. Is there any Senyaka, that we want to open it up for more questions?
Yeah, we can take a couple of questions from the audience.
Are there mics on? Do I need to?
No, they can just put it in the chat. Like if folks have any questions, take a couple of them and just put them in the chat. We can go from there.
Omar, what happened to the detox question, or the one around addiction? That was a good one.
Detox question. I had a lot of questions. I have a lot of personal questions too, but okay. Give me 1 second.
Well, there's one in the chat now. Maria's asking, Susan, can you talk about why we must organize to free political prisoners?
Yes, I can. I think we have a responsibility. Certainly for those of us in the movement, we have a direct responsibility to free the people who fell in the struggle for all of our freedom and our liberation, and to leave people behind. For myself personally, I recognize that I did a lot less prison time than most of the other political prisoners. And so for me, it's a very personal and deeply committed part of my life is to work to free all political prisoners. And there is a group of political prisoners that are elders who have been in prison for over, some of them, 50 years. Sundiata is going on 48 years in prison. Mtulu is 36 or 37 years in prison. And there's many others that are still incarcerated. And so I think it's a question of integrity for our movements, that if people fight for us, we have to fight for them. And so that's sort of a bottom line. I also think that fighting to free political prisoners helps to organize people now about what the state and the role of the state and what we're up against, the opposition that we face in trying to bring about social change and radical change and social justice. And I think there's multiple reasons why we have to work to free political prisoners. And I think it's really the right thing to do in terms of our own participation in all of our movements. I also think that there's new political prisoners. There's people falling in the struggle now, from Black Lives Matter, from the indigenous rights movement, from the animal rights movement. There are people who are being targeted and attacked by the state, not exactly in the kind of what the 60s and 70s, where there was this massive social movement where people's leadership had to be destroyed, but there are similarities to this day. So I think I also think recognizing that there are political prisoners really is important in terms of prison and taking apart the prison industrial complex, because the existence of political prisoners exposes one of the more extreme parts of the carceral state. So there are a lot of reasons to free political prisoners, all of them good and all of them important.
I said that part. Okay. This is more of a personal question about you. Initially, you became a drug counselor and then an activist, and you went into. I mean, what was, or did this kind of emerge simultaneously, or was it your activism that drove you to become a drug counselor, or and then a licensed practitioner?
It was both. I think it was a number of things. It was intersectional, as we would say now. I think, you know, it was.
You didn't say that back then, though. You didn't use that term.
We wouldn't have said that then. No, I think it was. You know, I think it was political activism that led me to want to be in organizing in the community. It was political activism that sent me to Lincoln Detox, but I also really thought acupuncture was an incredible tool, a healing tool. And, so I wanted to become an acupuncturist as well, and practiced acupuncture until when I went underground and graduated from the first class at Banner. So yeah.
Okay, so do we have any more questions? Can someone bring up the chat, because I can't. My mouse
Yes,
is.
Deb is gonna get in.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback off of the previous question of the importance of political prisoners and freeing them and struggling. I think it's important to understand the role the carceral state plays strategically in dampening, frightening, castrating movements. And when folks are moving through on their path to whatever form, right, towards self-determination, and the state goes and picks specific people and tries to make them inaccessible and succeeds in doing so, right, to community, what that does to generations. So, you know, outside of people giving over their lives for cause and movements, it's also it's what feeds us. So I just wanted to jump in.
And I see one more in the chat too, but go ahead.
Jackie, Luke Mine in the building. Something in the chat. Jackie.
Wow. Okay. So there's a question. It says, for Suzanne, what is the most important lesson you learned while in prison?
The most important lesson, I learned so many things in prison. It's impossible to qualify what was the most important, I think. But I think learning how to live in community inside prison was really important. I think being an anti-racist white prisoner and, you know, never deviating from that was something that, I mean, having to do that every day for many years had multiple lessons in it. You know, I don't know, there's just so many different things that I learned in prison. And, you know, I wouldn't take back that prison time, you know. So I don't know, that may be part of an answer, you know, that you are in prison, you're incarcerated, and you continue to live, you know. I think I felt very committed to the idea that I would not lose my political mind, my spirit, and my heart. And I think that's part of what we see when we look at any of the political prisoners now. You know, I was talking to Mtulu the other day, and his spirit is incredibly strong. You know, he's been under the most extreme circumstances for years and years, for all of this time, and yet his every phone call, no matter what, it's a spirit of resistance. And so I think I learned that you have that if you make the commitment to that.
It looks like we have a question from Corey Green. Deb, can you bring that up?
Susan, can you share any insights and memories about the pedagogy and process of Anna and the first training?
You know, it's hard for me to do that actually. But what I would say is, as it was shown in the film, that really Banner was a place in the community for people to come. And training was very hands-on. You know, it was very much, we had classes and we were treating people with supervision from very early on in our practice. But it would be hard for me to get very specific about that.
There's also one prior to which Maria wants to bring back, which is how have you been able to heal yourself since your release? Yeah.
I have been very privileged and very lucky. I went into therapy. I was able to build community. I wrote about the experience. I wrote a book about it. And I really tried to continue to struggle. I became a teacher. I'm a teacher at Hunter College. So I did a lot of things. I have a family and a partner. I was very lucky in so many ways. And I think that also, recognizing that, is also has compelled me to keep doing this work.
Can you speak a little bit about your, some of the universities places that you work who didn't appreciate your work? And I think that one of those being Rice, I don't know if you worked at Rice University, but no. Okay.
No,
but I know some colleges on the East Coast. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and how, you were the target of kind of like a witch hunter situation?
Yeah, I was. Well, at John Jay College of Criminal Justice, part of the CUNY system. I was discontinued as a teacher and put under attack by the FBI there. Hamilton College in New York. Those were the main places. And there was a targeted campaign, and there has been a targeted campaign by the right wing against certainly formerly incarcerated people, although now more and more formerly incarcerated people are teaching. But I think the combination of formerly incarcerated and my political history was just, that it triggered an attack and got me to stop teaching for a number of years.
So, do we have any more questions, Deb, in the chat? Because I can't bring it up because of my mouse. So, I have a few more questions. How much time do we have left, Sinyaka? Time check? Or are someone is saying that's enough? Suficiente? Es suficiente? Okay.
Yes. Even Suzanne began by saying 30 minutes, y'all. So.
But I feel this is such a privilege to have this conversation with you all. And I know that a lot of people on this call are organizers and, revolutionary activists themselves. And it's, I think it's good to be able to have a dialogue. It's a little more personal than I thought it might be, but that's okay too. And I would love to talk more with people offline about further questions and have more of a dialogue. So I hope that will happen.
Okay. And I hope to follow up with that. It's a privilege to have you. Appreciate your work, past and present. And Senyaki, you want to say something in closing?
All right. So thanks everybody for coming. We can't let you go without doing a call to action. So let me pull this up for folks real quick. Y'all see this all right?
Yep.
All right, cool. So this weekend of action, Black Love in Action for Dr. Mtulu Shakur. We're already on the second event for this weekend of action. Tomorrow, to uplift our morale and strengthen our spirits, we have an event, Arming the Spirit Sunday service, Sunday morning. Tomorrow morning at 11 Eastern, 10 Central, 8 Pacific. We're gonna hear from Dar'Asia Selby, who is an Oshun priestess, spirit worker, representing our traditional African religions. Dr. Mkungu Akinyela, who's a Christian pastor, and Imam Nadim Ali, who's a community master working with the Free Imam Jamil Alameen coalition. So join us tomorrow for those events. And then on Monday, our DC chapter is holding a Free Mtulu Now vigil at the Federal Bureau of Prisons in DC. And as part of that, for folks that aren't in Washington, DC, we are asking folks to take pictures, highlighting the demand to free Mtulu and bring him back home, and use the hashtags We Love Mtulu, Free Mtulu Now, and share that out on Twitter, social media. Like, just get it out there. We really want Baba Mtulu to be a household name. Right? So here are some other ways to participate. Right, one is to endorse the campaign. Right, we know this has been a long struggle. We need everybody's organizations, their families, their churches, their co-workers, like everybody to endorse this campaign. You can go to the bit.ly link down there, right? Thank you, Maria, for putting the links in the chat. The next thing, sign the petition for Dr. Mtulu Shakur's release. So that petition, we're over 50,000 signatures. The next bump is to get it up to 75,000. So you get it to your mamas, your grandmas, your sisters, your brothers, your cousins, right? And get it out to everybody. Everybody can at least do this part of the campaign.
If everyone can commit to getting 5 people, that's a huge beginning. And then get them to get 5 people.
Yes, we need to share out far and wide. Give yourself a goal. Those are great goals, Debbie. And then also one of the other ways to contribute is to actually write Dr. Mtulu Shakur. It's a way of maintaining our connection to our freedom fighters, letting them know that we still love them in the community, that we're thinking about him, that we're fighting for him, and showing him love, because he showed us so much love. And yesterday we had an event, and Baba Jalil Mutakin had mentioned in the event that if your movement is serious, it's going to be about freeing our political prisoners. It's going to be about freeing the people that fought for us and loved us, right? So that's the least we can do is, write Baba and show him that we still love him, that we haven't forgot him, and that we want him home. And then you can also donate to support the campaign at catnational.org. And as Susan mentioned, there are other political prisoners. We'll get there later, but there's also these postcards that you can download to write Baba. There's the example of Comrade Jomo and Taliba with their signs for the Twitter and social media campaigns. So folks have that. You have the link here for our social media toolkit. So tried to put all the materials together to make it easy for people to like take it and run with it and participate as in whatever way they can. And we really need to support all of our political prisoners. All right, so we got so many: Baba Suniyata Kohli, Mumia Abu-Jamal, Kamal Siddiqui, Varanza Bowers, Ojo Bamani Sababu, Jamil Alameen, Michelle McGee, Ed Poindexter, Leonard Peltier, so many more. And as Susan was saying, like we're going to continue having political prisoners as long as the state keeps on repressing our movements. So it's really, really important to support and uplift this movement to free our political prisoners. Every movement, every social justice movement in this planet, all of our liberation struggles, like one of the primary demands is to bring our political prisoners home. It's always a point of negotiation. It's always something that the serious are always about, and it needs to be our priority. So I'm gonna leave you with that. And let me get back up on here. I'm trying to get out of the screen real quick. I'm gonna leave you all with that. And I want to thank you all again. I want to thank you all again for participating in this event, joining the conversation. Thank you again, Susan, for joining us. I see so many comrades here from the Malcolm X grassroots movement, from like other movement veterans are up in here. Like I'm really, really excited for y'all participation. So thank you so much. See you all tomorrow.
Inyaka, run the picture so that they can see it from the PowerPoint.
Run the picture so I can see it from PowerPoint.
Just run the PowerPoint.
Hold on. Let me get it back up.
As you guys jump off, you can see the power people.
I gotta pull it down again. I'm sorry.
Free the land on hell.
Okay.
Peace, Susan.
Here we go. Yeah.
All right. Thanks for coming, everybody. And look at our community. Look at our people. All right. Take care, everybody. Free the land.
Free the land.
Free it.
Free it.
all.
Free them all.
Any means necessary.
Free them all. All right, y'all. Thanks so much. This is great. This was a fabulous evening. I really, really appreciate you hanging out and enjoying this documentary. I enjoyed it. And free the land. What's the call? Free them all. Y'all have a good night.